Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Ellis Donovan. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought I'd end up alone in the mountains of the North Cascades. After my tech startup crashed and burned in Seattle, taking my savings and relationship with it, I needed an escape from the constant digital noise and judgmental whispers. My cousin Blake had a small cabin about 30 miles from Winthrop that he barely used, and he offered it to me while I got my head straight. The property was tucked away on 20 acres of dense forest with only a rough access road connecting it to civilization. No cell service, spotty solar power, and just enough amenities to get by. The first few weeks were actually therapeutic. I'd wake with the sun, chop wood for the small stove, and spend hours hiking the surrounding wilderness. Blake had introduced me to Maren and Ethan Johnston, an older couple who lived about 2 miles down the mountain. They were experienced off-gridders who had been living self-sufficiently for nearly 15 years. They showed me how to identify edible plants, trap small game, and conserve resources. There was also Dakota, a reclusive Vietnam vet who lived somewhere deeper in the forest. The Johnstons mentioned him occasionally, but said he preferred to be left alone. I still remember that crisp October morning when I first sensed something wasn't right. I was gathering kindling near the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the property when I spotted unusual markings on several trees. They weren't the typical blazes left by forest services or hikers. These were intricate symbols carved deeply into the bark, arranged in patterns that seemed deliberate. I dismissed them as the work of previous hikers or maybe local kids, but something about their precision made my skin crawl. I took photos with my digital camera, thinking I'd ask the Johnstons about them when I next visited. That evening, as dusk settled over the forest, I was cooking dinner when I heard a distinct metallic scraping sound from outside. My first thought was that some animal was getting into my tools or the generator housing. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch, sweeping the beam across the clearing. Nothing seemed disturbed, but the beam caught something at the forest's edge that made my breath catch, a flash of reflective material that disappeared the moment my light found it. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. No response, just the normal chorus of night insects and distant owl calls. I slept poorly that night, jolting awake several times to sounds that seemed just outside my consciousness, not quite distinct enough to identify, but unsettling nonetheless. By morning, I convinced myself it was just the adjustment to forest living. The isolation was getting to me, making my mind manufacture threats where none existed. Still, I decided to hike over to the Johnstons' place later that day. Their weathered but welcoming cabin was a stark contrast to my temporary dwelling. Maren was tending to her impressive vegetable garden, while Ethan was repairing a section of their rainwater collection system. "Those markings you described," Ethan said after examining my photos, his normally relaxed face now creased with concern. "They're new. Weren't there when we hiked through your section last month?" Maren leaned over to look, her gray-streaked hair falling forward as she studied the images. "Could be surveyors," she suggested, but her tone lacked conviction. "There've been rumors of a mining company looking to explore some areas around here." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Those aren't survey marks, Maren. You know that." The look they exchanged sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. The walk back to my cabin that afternoon felt different. The forest, which had seemed so peaceful and rejuvenating, now felt watchful. I found myself scanning the trees, looking for more of those strange symbols, or worse, whoever had carved them. About halfway home, I came across something that stopped me cold, a small arrangement of stones in the middle of the path, too precisely placed to be natural. They formed a perfect circle with a single stone in the center, and arranged around them were small animal bones, bleached white by the sun. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stepped around it, quickening my pace toward the cabin. By the time I reached the clearing, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. But my attention was fixed on my cabin, specifically on the front door that now stood ajar. I was certain I'd locked it before leaving. I approached cautiously, calling out in case the Johnstons had decided to check on me. Silence answered. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed at first glance. My few possessions were where I'd left them. The only difference was a small, hand-carved wooden figurine placed precisely in the center of my table, a crude human shape with exaggerated limbs and no facial features. And beneath it, a piece of yellowed paper with a single word scrawled in what looked like charcoal: leave. I spent that night with my hunting knife beside me, jumping at every creak and groan of the cabin's wooden frame. The figurine sat on the porch where I'd tossed it, unable to bring myself to touch it longer than necessary. When morning finally broke through the windows, I was exhausted but resolute. I wasn't going to be scared off my property by some backwoods intimidation tactics. Still, I needed answers. After a quick breakfast, I hiked up to Dakota's area, hoping the reclusive veteran might have seen something or someone unusual in the woods. Dakota's setup was impressive, a partially underground structure with excellent sightlines across the surrounding terrain. He seemed surprised to see me, but invited me in after I explained the situation. His living space was Spartan but organized, with military precision evident in every detail. "Those symbols," he said, examining my photos with narrowed eyes. "They started appearing about 3 weeks ago. Not just near your place." He pulled out a hand-drawn map of the area and pointed to several marked locations. Here, and over by the abandoned Nelson property. Always in clusters. When I showed him the figurine, his weathered face darkened. "You need to be careful, Ellis. These mountains have secrets." On my way back, I decided to take a different route, cutting through a section of forest I hadn't explored yet. The terrain was rougher here, with steep ravines and dense underbrush making progress difficult. About a mile from my cabin, I stumbled upon an old fire road I hadn't noticed on any maps. Curiosity pulled me along it until I reached a small clearing. What I found there disturbed me profoundly. A circle of those same symbols carved into trees surrounding a makeshift altar of flat stones. On top lay the decomposing remains of what appeared to be several small animals arranged in a distinct pattern. The overwhelming stench of decay sent me reeling backward, and I nearly lost my footing on the uneven ground. That night, the temperature dropped significantly, and I built up the fire in the wood stove. Every sound outside seemed amplified, the rustling of leaves, the occasional crack of a branch. I tried distracting myself by reading, but my attention kept drifting to the windows and door. Around midnight, I heard it, 3 distinct knocks on the cabin wall, from the side facing the deepest part of the forest. My blood ran cold. "Who's there?" I called out, knife in hand. No answer came, but a minute later, 3 more knocks sounded from a different wall. I switched off all lights and peered through a gap in the curtains. The moon cast enough light to see the clearing, but the forest beyond was an impenetrable wall of darkness. The knocking continued through the night, never from the same place twice, and always in sets of 3. By dawn, I was a nervous wreck, jumping at shadows and imagining movement in every corner of my vision. I spent the morning reinforcing my doors and windows, using extra lumber Blake had stored in the small shed. As I worked, I noticed fresh footprints in the soft earth around the cabin. Not the distinct tread of hiking boots, but something different. They seemed oddly elongated, with uneven spacing that suggested someone walking with an unusual gait. I followed them to the edge of the property, where they disappeared into a particularly dense patch of underbrush. When I reached the Johnstons' cabin later that day, I found it eerily quiet. Their truck was there, but no one answered my calls. The door was unlocked, so I cautiously entered, calling their names. The interior was in disarray. Chairs overturned, items scattered across the floor as if someone had left in a hurry. On their kitchen table lay a map similar to Dakota's, but with additional markings and a hastily scrawled note. "They're coming down from the old mining camps. Too many this year. Meet at the emergency spot." My stomach twisted with dread as I realized the Johnstons had abandoned their home of 15 years without warning me. With growing apprehension, I decided to return to Dakota's place, hoping he might have more information about what was happening. The forest felt different now, threatening, alive with malevolent intention. Every snapping twig or rustling leaf sent adrenaline coursing through my system. When I finally reached Dakota's compound, I found his door standing open, the interior dark. "Dakota," I called, stepping cautiously inside. The place had been ransacked, equipment scattered across the floor, food supplies emptied. In the center of his main room was a larger version of the figurine that had been left on my table, but this one had been partially burned, its extremities charred black. Back at my cabin, I frantically gathered essential supplies, determined to leave before nightfall. Whatever was happening in these woods, I wanted no part of it. As I was loading my backpack, a movement at the tree line caught my eye. A figure stood partially obscured by foliage, tall and unnaturally thin, perfectly still. When I turned to face it directly, it stepped back into the shadows. "Who are you?" I shouted, fear and frustration boiling over. "What do you want?" The only response was a rustling sound that seemed to circle the clearing, as if multiple entities were moving around me just beyond sight. That's when I noticed them. Dozens of the crude figurines hanging from tree branches at the forest's edge, swaying slightly in the breeze. That night brought the worst storm I'd experienced since arriving in Washington. Thunder crashed overhead as rain lashed against the cabin windows with frightening intensity. I had decided to wait until morning to leave. Driving down the treacherous mountain road in these conditions would be suicidal. I double-checked all locks and barricaded the door with furniture, creating a makeshift alarm system with cooking pots that would clatter if anyone tried to enter. Sleep was impossible as the wind howled through the trees, occasionally punctuated by sounds that couldn't possibly be natural. Rhythmic tapping on the roof, scratching at the walls, and at one point, what sounded distinctly like whispering just outside my bedroom window. Around 3 a.m., the power from my solar system failed completely, plunging the cabin into darkness. The backup generator was in the shed 20 yards away, might as well have been miles in the current situation. I fumbled for my flashlight, hands trembling as I swept the beam across the room. That's when I noticed the water, not from rain or flooding, but seeping up through the floorboards, black and viscous like oil, but with no petroleum smell. It pooled in the center of the floor, spreading outward in tendrils that seemed to move with purpose. I backed away, watching in horror as the liquid began to take shape, rising up in a column that vaguely resembled a human form. Dawn broke with an unnatural reddish glow filtering through the storm clouds. The black substance had receded sometime during the night, leaving no trace except a faint, acrid odor. I was beyond exhausted but determined to escape. As I loaded the last of my essentials into my truck, I spotted something halfway up the access road. A massive tree had fallen, completely blocking the path. It looked freshly felled, its leaves still green and vibrant. When I approached to assess the damage, my blood ran cold. The cut at the base wasn't rough and splintered as it would be from natural causes. It was smooth, clearly done with an axe or chainsaw. I returned to the cabin to retrieve the satellite phone Blake had left for emergencies, only to find it missing from its charging station. Panic rose in my chest as I tore through drawers and cabinets, searching for it. That's when I heard the first scream, distant but unmistakably human, coming from somewhere deep in the forest. It was followed by another, closer this time, then silence. My hands shook as I grabbed my hunting knife and the small canister of bear spray I kept by the door. Whatever was happening, I couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. I had to try reaching the main road on foot, even if it meant a 15-mile hike through increasingly hostile territory. The forest felt alive with malice as I made my way down the overgrown hiking trail that ran parallel to the access road. The rain had stopped, but a thick mist clung to the ground, reducing visibility to mere yards. Every few minutes, I'd stop to listen, constantly feeling watched from all sides. About 2 miles in, I came across one of Dakota's traps, the kind he used for catching small game. But what it had caught turned my stomach. A human hand, severed at the wrist, the flesh gray and bloated. Nearby, more of those symbols had been freshly carved into a large cedar, the wood still oozing sap. Midday brought no relief from the oppressive atmosphere. The mist had thickened rather than burned off, and the forest canopy blocked most of the sunlight, creating a perpetual twilight effect. I was moving as quickly as the terrain allowed when I heard it. A low, rhythmic chanting carried on the breeze, coming from somewhere ahead. Logic told me to avoid it, but the trail offered the only clear path forward. As I crept closer, I could make out multiple voices, speaking words in no language I recognized. Through a break in the trees, I saw them, a group of 7 or 8 figures in tattered clothing, standing in a circle around something I couldn't quite see. I tried to skirt around them, keeping to the densest underbrush for cover. I'd nearly made it past when my foot came down on a dry branch, the crack like a gunshot in the stillness. The chanting stopped immediately. I froze, praying they hadn't heard. But when I glanced back, they were all facing my direction. Their appearance made my skin crawl, gaunt to the point of emaciation, with sunken eyes and skin that had a grayish, almost translucent quality. One raised a hand, pointing directly at me, and made a sound like nothing I'd ever heard, a high-pitched keening that the others immediately echoed. Then they began moving toward me with that same uneven gait I'd noticed in the footprints. I ran blindly through the forest, abandoning the trail in my panic. Branches whipped at my face and arms, leaving stinging welts, but I didn't slow down. The keening sound followed me, sometimes seeming to come from all directions at once. I don't know how long I fled. Time lost all meaning in the adrenaline-fueled haze of terror. Eventually, I stumbled into another clearing and found myself face to face with a familiar structure, Dakota's partially underground home. I'd somehow circled back in my panic. With the sounds of pursuit still behind me, I had no choice but to seek shelter there, hoping to find a weapon more substantial than my knife. Dakota's place was even more disturbing in daylight. What I had taken for general disarray in my previous visit now revealed itself as something more sinister. The walls were covered in the same symbols I'd found carved into trees, but these were drawn in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. Maps and papers were pinned everywhere, connected by red strings, creating a web of information I couldn't begin to decipher. In the center of this chaos was a journal, open to a page with frantically scribbled notes. They were miners once, lost in the collapse of '89. What came back wasn't human anymore. They take people every 7 years. They're hungry again. I barricaded myself inside, using Dakota's furniture to block the single entrance. A quick search revealed a loaded shotgun hidden beneath a loose floorboard, small comfort against whatever horror was unfolding in these woods. Through a narrow window, I watched as figures moved at the edge of the clearing, never directly approaching but maintaining a perimeter as if waiting for something. Their movements were jerky, uncoordinated, yet somehow deliberate. As darkness began to fall, their numbers seemed to increase, shadows detaching from the forest to join the silent watchers. The night brought a new terror, the sound of digging. It started beneath the structure, a persistent scraping noise that suggested multiple implements at work. The floor began to vibrate slightly with the effort. They were trying to get in from below. I moved to the corner furthest from the sounds, shotgun trained on the floorboards, watching in growing horror as dirt began to sift up through the cracks. A small hole appeared, then another, steadily growing larger. Through one, I caught a glimpse of pale, dirty fingers clawing at the wood, the nails long and yellow like talons. I fired the shotgun at the largest hole, eliciting an inhuman shriek from below. The digging stopped momentarily, then resumed with even greater intensity. I was down to my last few shells when I heard a new sound outside, the distinctive rumble of a vehicle engine. Headlights swept across the windows as it pulled into the clearing. The figures retreated into the forest like smoke before wind. I cautiously approached the window to see a familiar truck, the Johnstons. Ethan stepped out, shotgun in hand, scanning the tree line with practiced vigilance. "Ellis," he called, "if you're in there, we need to move now. They'll be back with more." The drive down the mountain was a nightmare of hairpin turns and near misses as Ethan pushed the truck to its limits. Marin sat in the back with me, her normally kind face now hard with fear and determination. "We should have warned you properly," she said over the engine's roar. "But we didn't think they'd come for you so quickly. They usually observe for weeks before making contact." When I asked who they were, the couple exchanged that same disturbing look I'd seen before. "The people who disappeared in the mining collapse weren't all killed," Ethan finally said. "Some found something down there in the darkness, something that changed them. They've been living in the old mine shafts ever since, coming out only when they need sustenance." We reached the main highway around midnight, the bright lights of passing cars never looking so welcome. Ethan drove to a small motel in Winthrop where several other people were gathered, all looking haggard and frightened. I recognized some as residents of the scattered cabins in our area. "We evacuate every 7 years, Marin explained as we hurried inside. "Stay away for a month until their hunger subsides. It's the arrangement we made long ago." The word arrangement sent a chill through me. "You knew about this? You let it happen?" Ethan's face darkened. "We tried fighting once. They took 17 people that year instead of the usual 3 or 4. Sometimes survival means making terrible choices. Inside the motel room, maps were spread across a table where several older men were engaged in intense discussion. They fell silent when we entered, eyeing me with suspicion. "He's clean," Ethan assured them. They hadn't marked him yet. One of the men, who introduced himself as Sheriff Hadley, though he didn't look like any law enforcement officer I'd ever seen, handed me a glass of amber liquid. "Drink this. All of it." I hesitated, but Maren nodded encouragingly. The liquid burned going down, with a bitter aftertaste that made me gag. "Protection," Hadley explained cryptically, "in case they got close enough to leave spores." As the night wore on, more people arrived at the motel, each with their own horror story from the mountain. One family had barely escaped when the creatures began emerging from their well. An elderly man sobbed as he described his wife being dragged into the forest while he hid, paralyzed with fear. Most disturbing was the young couple who arrived just before dawn, their clothes caked with mud and blood. "Dakota's dead," the man announced flatly. "We found what was left of him near the old mine entrance. They've put his head on some kind of stake, facing the mountain like a warning." The news hit me like a physical blow. Though I'd barely known him, Dakota had tried to warn me, had perhaps even delayed his own escape to leave me that journal. Morning brought no relief from the horror, just the grim reality that people I'd met were dead or missing, and that something inhuman was hunting in the woods I'd foolishly thought of as a sanctuary. Sheriff Hadley outlined the situation in blunt terms. "We've got about 12 hours before they realize we've evacuated and start moving down toward more populated areas. We need to seal the mine entrances again, all of them, before nightfall." The plan was dangerous, but necessary. 3 teams would approach the mountain from different access points, each targeting known mine entrances with explosives. I volunteered to join Ethan's team, partly from a desire to face what had driven me from my temporary home, partly from a growing sense that I bore some responsibility for not heeding the warnings sooner. We armed ourselves with whatever weapons were available: shotguns, hunting rifles, even makeshift flamethrowers constructed from propane tanks. "Fire hurts them," Ethan explained. "Doesn't kill them easily, but slows them down." We ascended in broad daylight, taking advantage of the creature's apparent aversion to strong sunlight. The forest felt different now. The beauty I'd admired had transformed into something sinister and corrupt. Even the air seemed tainted, carrying a faint odor of decay and something else, something chemical that burned the nostrils. As we approached the first mine entrance, a horizontal shaft partially concealed by vegetation, we encountered our first sign of the creatures, a series of those crude figurines arranged in concentric circles around the opening, each one larger than the last. Ethan worked quickly, placing shaped charges at key structural points while the rest of us formed a perimeter. The tension was unbearable. Every snapping twig or rustling leaf sent hands to weapons. We were nearly finished when one of our group, a younger man named Chris, whispered urgently, "Movement, 3 o'clock." We turned to see a figure emerge from behind a large boulder. Humanoid, but wrong in proportions, with elongated limbs and a torso that seemed to bend at impossible angles. Its face, if it could be called that, was a horror of stretched skin and misplaced features, the mouth a gaping hole that opened wider than anatomically possible. What followed was chaos. The creature moved with shocking speed, crossing the clearing before we could properly aim. It took Chris down with a single swipe of its arm, the cracking of his ribs audible even from where I stood. Ethan fired his shotgun twice, the blast tearing chunks from the thing's body without seeming to slow it. I stood frozen until it turned toward me, those empty eye sockets somehow fixing on my position. The flamethrower was in my hands before I registered moving, the trigger depressed on pure instinct. The creature shrieked as flames engulfed it, the sound so high-pitched it felt like needles in my eardrums. We detonated the charges from a safe distance, the explosion sending a plume of dust and debris skyward. Ethan's radio crackled with reports from the other teams. They'd encountered similar resistance, but had successfully sealed their assigned entrances. Our relief was short-lived, however, as the radio suddenly erupted with screams and the sound of gunfire from Team 3. Through broken transmissions, we gathered they'd encountered not single creatures, but a group of at least 12, emerging from the forest rather than the mine itself. Their final transmission cut off mid-scream. With 2 entrances sealed and the third team presumably lost, we faced a terrible choice: retreat with the job half done or push on to the main entrance, the largest shaft that descended vertically into the mountain. Sheriff Hadley's voice came through on the radio, his tone leaving no room for argument. Complete the mission. We can't do this again in 7 years if we fail now. The implication was clear. This was our one chance to end the cycle permanently. The sun was already dipping toward the horizon as we made our way to the final location, each of us acutely aware that darkness would bring the creatures in force. The main entrance was a gaping wound in the mountainside, partially collapsed but still large enough to allow passage. The area around it was decorated with grisly tableaus, human remains in various states of decay arranged in patterns similar to the symbols I'd seen carved into trees. Most disturbing were the fresher bodies, obviously recent victims, their expressions frozen in terminal horror. Among them, I recognized Dakota's weathered face, his eyes mercifully closed but his body positioned in a cruel parody of crucifixion against a makeshift wooden frame. As Ethan began placing the largest charges we had brought, I noticed something odd, a subtle vibration in the ground, gradually increasing in intensity. Something's coming, I warned, just as the first of them emerged from the darkness of the shaft. This one was different from what we'd encountered earlier, more massive, its body a patchwork of what appeared to be multiple human forms fused together in a grotesque amalgamation. Behind it came others, dozens of them, some crawling on all fours like animals, others moving in that jerky, uncoordinated manner I'd observed before. Ethan shouted for me to run, to get clear of the blast zone, but I couldn't leave him alone against such overwhelming odds. I fired the flamethrower in wide arcs, creating a barrier of fire between the creatures and where Ethan worked frantically to complete the wiring. One broke through, its flesh blackening and peeling away to reveal something underneath that wasn't bone but a glistening, metallic substance. I emptied my handgun into it, each impact causing it to jerk but not fall until the final bullet pierced what should have been its eye, sending it crashing to the ground where it continued to twitch and convulse. "It's done," Ethan called, backing away from the entrance with the detonator in hand. We retreated as quickly as the rough terrain allowed, the creatures following with that terrible keening sound rising from dozens of throats. When we reached what Ethan deemed a safe distance, he stopped and turned. "Get down," he ordered, and I dropped to the ground as he pressed the detonator. The explosion was massive, far larger than I had expected, the shockwave knocking the breath from my lungs. The mountainside seemed to collapse in on itself, tons of rock and earth cascading down to bury the entrance completely. The silence that followed was deafening in its absoluteness. No birds, no insects, no wind in the trees, just the faint ringing in my ears from the explosion. Ethan helped me to my feet, his face streaked with dirt and blood, but wearing an expression of grim satisfaction. That's when we heard it, a low rumbling from deep within the earth, building steadily in volume and intensity. The ground beneath our feet began to shake violently. "Run," Ethan shouted, pushing me ahead of him as fissures opened in the forest floor behind us. We had sealed the entrance, yes, but in doing so, we had destabilized the entire network of tunnels beneath the mountain. We ran without direction or plan, simply trying to put distance between ourselves and the collapsing ground. Trees toppled around us as sinkholes formed and expanded with frightening speed. I lost sight of Ethan in the chaos, his shouted warnings drowned out by the roar of shifting earth. A particularly violent tremor knocked me off my feet, sending me tumbling down a steep embankment toward one of the newly formed chasms. I clawed desperately at roots and rocks, anything to stop my descent, finally catching hold of a sturdy tree trunk mere feet from the edge. As I clung there, catching my breath, I heard something from within the chasm, not the sound of falling debris or shifting earth, but voices, hundreds of them, rising in that same keening wail I had come to dread, but amplified 100-fold. Against my better judgment, I peered over the edge. What I saw in those depths will haunt me until my dying day. A mass of writhing forms, neither fully human nor anything else identifiable, moving as one entity up toward the surface. At their center was something vast and glistening, a pulsating core that emitted a sickly blue luminescence. and it was rising, using the very channels we had created by collapsing the mines to reach the surface. I don't remember how I made it back to the evacuation point. The next clear memory I have is sitting in the back of a National Guard transport as we sped away from the mountain range, watching as plumes of dust and unnatural blue light erupted from multiple points across the landscape. The official story that emerged in the following days was of a major seismic event triggering mine collapses throughout the region. No mention was made of the 37 people who never made it out of those mountains, or of the strange illness that affected livestock and wildlife for miles around in the aftermath. I write this account from a small apartment in Portland, where I've tried to rebuild some semblance of a normal life. The nightmares come less frequently now, though I still wake sometimes to the sound of knocking. 3 distinct taps that never come from the same place twice. Ethan and Maren Johnston disappeared during the evacuation. Whether they were casualties of the collapse or something worse, I'll never know. Sheriff Hadley and the remaining survivors have maintained a code of silence about what really happened, though I occasionally receive cryptic messages warning me to stay away from Washington state entirely. Most disturbing are the news reports I've begun noticing. Small items buried in local papers about unusual markings found on trees in isolated areas of Oregon and Northern California. Symbols, they say, unlike anything forest rangers have encountered before. And sometimes, in my darkest moments, I swear I can feel it, a subtle vibration through the floorboards, a whisper of movement just beyond my peripheral vision. Because deep down, I know the truth. We didn't destroy them. We only made them angry. And they're spreading. My name is Vivian Reese. I'm 41 years old, and I bought my dream property in the Skagit Valley wetlands after 20 exhausting years as an emergency room nurse in Seattle. The constant barrage of trauma, death, and human suffering had hollowed me out, leaving nothing but bone-deep fatigue and the desperate need for silence. The 5-acre plot with its small but sturdy cabin sat at the edge of a vast marsh system, accessible only by a narrow gravel road that frequently flooded during Washington's notorious rainy season. Perfect isolation, no neighbors, no cell service, and blissfully, no steady stream of broken bodies needing my expertise. The previous owner, a taciturn man named Garrett, had sold the place at a suspiciously low price, muttering something about seasonal challenges that I had attributed to the flooding. He'd left behind most of the off-grid infrastructure, a robust solar array, rainwater collection system, and a surprisingly sophisticated filtration setup for the marsh water. The only other people I regularly encountered were Lena Blackwood, an ethnobotanist who lived about 3 miles away studying indigenous plant uses, and occasionally Tobias, a weathered fisherman who navigated the deeper channels of the marsh in a flat-bottomed boat, harvesting crawfish and collecting samples for the environmental research station further north. The first month was exactly what I needed. Days spent restoring the overgrown garden, evenings watching herons stalk through the reeds as the sun set in spectacular fashion over the water. The constant symphony of frogs, insects, and water birds replaced the beeping monitors and pained moans of the ER. I felt my nervous system slowly unwinding after years of constant fight-or-flight response. My sleep, chronically disturbed during my nursing career, deepened and lengthened until I was routinely sleeping 9 dreamless hours, waking refreshed in a way I hadn't experienced since childhood. The subtle wrongness began in late September, as summer's warmth gave way to autumn's chill. I was harvesting the last of the season's tomatoes when I noticed something unusual in the water about 50 yards from my property line. A perfect circle of absolutely still water, perhaps 15 feet in diameter. Around it, the marsh moved naturally with the breeze, ripples and small waves catching the afternoon light. But that circle remained mirror-smooth, as if frozen solid despite the warm day. When I walked to the water's edge for a better look, it disappeared, the entire marsh surface resuming its normal movement. That night brought the first of the disturbing dreams. Visions of myself wading into the marsh, water rising past my knees, my waist, my shoulders, drawn towards something luminous beneath the surface. I would wake gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat rather than marsh water, relieved to find myself safely in bed. After the third such dream, I mentioned it to Lena during her visit to exchange some homemade preserves for the medicinal tinctures she created. Her usual animated expression faltered slightly before she suggested it was probably just my brain processing the transition from urban to rural life. A week later, I discovered the first of the unusual deposits on my shoreline. A perfect line of small bones arranged by size, from what looked like tiny fish vertebrae at one end to what I disturbingly recognized as human finger bones at the other. My medical training left no doubt about the latter identification. I told myself they must be very old, perhaps from some unmarked Native American burial site disturbed by changing water levels. Still, I collected them in a small box, intending to contact local authorities when I next went into town. That night, I locked my doors for the first time since moving in. The sound woke me just after 3 a.m., a soft, rhythmic tapping at my bedroom window. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. The curtains were drawn, and for several frozen moments, I couldn't bring myself to look. When I finally gathered my courage and pulled the fabric aside, I found myself staring at a perfect handprint on the glass, small and delicate like a child's, but webbed between the fingers. It appeared to be made of some bioluminescent substance that cast a sickly green glow across my windowsill. Below it, at the foundation of the cabin, water had pooled despite there being no rain for days. Morning revealed no trace of the handprint, making me question whether I'd dreamed the entire incident. But the water remained, seeping upward through the ground around my cabin's foundation as if drawn by an unseen force. I spent the day placing sandbags and digging drainage trenches, physical labor that helped quiet my growing unease. As dusk approached, I noticed that the chorus of frogs and insects that normally filled the evening air had gone completely silent. The marsh lay preternaturally still under the rising moon, reflective as a sheet of black glass. And on that mirror surface, just at the edge of visibility, I could swear I saw ripples moving against the natural current, heading deliberately toward my property. That night, I barricaded myself inside, every light blazing against the darkness. I tried calling Lena on my satellite phone, but the connection failed repeatedly despite perfect weather conditions. Around midnight, the power abruptly cut out, plunging the cabin into darkness despite the backup systems that should have prevented such a failure. In the sudden silence, I could hear water, not rain on the roof or wind-driven waves against the shore, but the distinct sound of liquid dripping inside the cabin. I followed the noise to the bathroom, where I found every faucet running at full capacity, the drain somehow blocked so that water spilled over onto the floor. When I reached to shut off the tap, the water felt wrong, slightly viscous and unnaturally warm, like blood fresh from a vein. At first light, I threw essential supplies into my truck and attempted to leave, only to find the access road submerged under 3 feet of water that hadn't been there the previous afternoon. Impossible given the weather, yet there it was, cutting off my only escape route. As I stood contemplating my options, movement in the marsh caught my eye. A pale figure, standing motionless among the reeds about 100 yards out. Too distant to make out details, but undeniably human in shape, watching me with an intensity one could feel like physical pressure. When I raised my hand in tentative greeting, it slowly sank straight down into the water, maintaining its rigid posture until even its head disappeared beneath the surface. No splash, no disturbance of the reeds, as if the marsh had simply swallowed it whole. I spent the next day reinforcing my increasingly vulnerable position, moving important supplies to the cabin's small loft in case of flooding, and taking inventory of anything that could serve as a weapon. The satellite phone remained stubbornly useless, producing only a wet, gurgling sound when I attempted calls. My solar batteries were draining at an alarming rate despite minimal usage, and the drinking water from my supposedly pristine filtration system had developed a distinct brackish taste with undertones of something organic and decaying. I dumped it and switched to bottled reserves, acutely aware of their limited supply. The water around my property was rising steadily, though no rain had fallen. By mid-afternoon, it had crept up to the first step of my porch, and with it came an odor, not the typical earthy scent of marshland, but something older and more primal, like disturbed grave soil mixed with the copper tang of blood. Small fish swam in the newly formed shallows around my cabin, their movements oddly coordinated, as if they were forming patterns or symbols just beneath the surface. When I approached the water's edge, they scattered, only to reform their bizarre configurations when I stepped back. That evening, I spotted Tobias's boat moving through a distant channel and ran down to the shore, waving frantically to catch his attention. He altered course and approached cautiously, keeping his boat at what seemed a deliberately safe distance. "You need to leave, Ms. Reese," he called across the water, his weathered face grave beneath his usual cap. "High tide's bringing something in tonight. Something that's been sleeping a long time." When I asked what he meant, his expression turned fearful. "They come in cycles. Every 30 years, the marsh changes. Takes people. Last time was 1994. My brother was one of them." As Tobias spoke, I noticed movement in the water between us, shapes just below the surface, circling his boat like sharks. He saw them too and began backing away, his ancient outboard motor sputtering. "Head for higher ground," he shouted as the distance between us grew. "They can't follow out of the water yet." The word "yet" sent ice through my veins. The last glimpse I had of Tobias was his boat rounding a bend in the channel, one hand raised in what seemed like farewell rather than a promise to send help. Behind me, water now completely surrounded my cabin, the wooden steps of my porch disappearing beneath its dark surface. Night fell with terrifying swiftness, clouds blotting out stars and moon alike. I sat in my darkened cabin, conservation mode having shut down all non-essential systems. The only light came from my single kerosene lantern, casting grotesque shadows across the walls. Around 10 p.m., the scratching began, light at first, like branches against the siding, then more deliberate, moving systematically around the perimeter of the cabin. I tracked the sound with my flashlight through the windows, but saw nothing except rippling water reflecting the beam back at me. Then came the voices, distant at first, calling in sing-song tones that almost formed words in a language I couldn't quite identify. I must have dozed despite my terror, because I jerked awake to find pale light filtering through my windows, not daylight, but an eerie luminescence emanating from the water itself. The marsh was glowing, countless points of blue-green light pulsing in sync beneath the surface. Standing at my living room window, I watched in horrified fascination as the lights began moving, flowing together to form distinct shapes. First abstract patterns like those the fish had formed, then more recognizable designs. A human face, a hand reaching upward, a perfect representation of my cabin with a tiny figure visible in the window, me, watching them. The water had risen to my windowsills by morning, seeping through imperceptible cracks despite my best efforts at sealing them. The cabin creaked and groaned as if under immense pressure. Looking out, I could no longer see where marsh ended and sky began. The world had become a seamless expanse of gray-green water in all directions. It was while checking the integrity of my roof access hatch that I found them. Dozens of small objects nestled in my gutters and arranged along the roof's edge. They appeared to be crafted from marsh reeds and tiny bones, forming crude human figures with disproportionately large heads. Each one faced inward, toward the center of the roof, creating a perfect circle of silent watchers. I was contemplating this disturbing discovery when I heard the distinctive sound of an approaching motor, Lena's old pickup truck somehow navigating the submerged road. Relief flooded through me as I watched her vehicle splash toward my property, water reaching halfway up the wheels. I grabbed my emergency pack and headed for the porch, ready to wade out and meet her if necessary. She stopped about 50 yards away, the closest the deepening water would allow, and rolled down her window. "Vivian," she called. "We need to go now. I've been trying to reach you." Something in her voice sent warning signals through my brain, a slight dissonance, as if two people were speaking simultaneously. My hesitation must have been visible, because Lena's expression changed subtly, her usually warm features hardening. "Don't you trust me, Vivian?" she called, her voice modulating strangely, emphasizing random syllables. "I'm here to help you. Come into the water. It's perfectly safe." Behind her truck, I noticed the surface of the marsh rippling in that now familiar pattern, converging toward her vehicle in deliberate lines. As I watched, frozen in indecision, water began pouring from Lena's open window, not outside in, but inside out, as if her truck were filling from within. Her smile remained fixed, her hand beckoning steadily even as dark water rose past her shoulders inside the cab. I backed away as Lena's truck slowly sank into the marsh, her face the last thing visible before the water closed over the roof. No bubbles, no struggle, just the silent submersion of metal and glass, and what I now knew couldn't possibly be my friend. I retreated into the cabin, barricading the door with furniture even as water continued to rise through the floorboards. My world had narrowed to the small loft where I'd relocated my supplies, accessible only by a ladder that I pulled up after me. Outside, the sky had darkened again despite it being mid-afternoon, heavy clouds hanging so low they seemed to touch the water's surface. The scratching resumed that night, but from below now, under the floorboards, inside the walls, growing more aggressive with passing hours. Wood splintered somewhere downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of water rushing in. By flashlight, I could see it rising up the ladder while toward my loft sanctuary, bringing with it those bioluminescent particles that pulsed in hypnotic rhythm. As the water climbed higher, shapes began to coalesce within it, vaguely humanoid forms composed entirely of the glowing substance, reaching upward with elongated fingers. From their midst rose a more solid figure that I recognized with dawning horror as Garrett, the cabin's previous owner, his flesh pallid and bloated, but his eyes alight with the same blue-green luminescence. "They've been waiting for you, Vivian," Garrett said, his voice bubbling as if spoken through liquid despite his mouth being above the waterline. "The marshland has its own ecosystem, its own consciousness, and it's hungry." He smiled, revealing teeth that had been filed to points, the gaps between them filled with squirming things I couldn't identify. "I lasted 7 years before they found me worthy. You should be flattered. They've chosen you after only 2 months." Behind him, more figures were rising from the water, some I recognized as missing persons I'd seen on community bulletin boards in town, others so transformed they barely resembled humans anymore. The water continued its inexorable rise, now just inches below my loft. I backed away to the farthest corner, clutching my pathetic emergency pack with its dwindling supplies. The luminous particles swirled more frantically as the distance closed, forming a vortex around the ladder well. From this maelstrom emerged something that stole what little breath remained in my lungs, a column of water that held its shape against all natural laws, topped with a roughly formed head and upper torso. No features were discernible in what should have been a face, just deeper concentrations of that terrible light forming approximations of eyes and a mouth. "We are the oldest consciousness in this region," the water form said, its voice like gravel washing in tide pools, somehow simultaneously outside and inside my head. "Before trees, before stone, before oxygen itself, we were here, dormant for ages, awakened by the blood offerings of indigenous rituals, sustained now by new disciples." As it spoke, the human figures arranged themselves in supplication around it, Garrett at the forefront, all partially submerged and watching me with those haunting luminescent eyes. "Your medical knowledge is particularly valuable to our evolution. Your understanding of human anatomy will serve us well." I found my voice at last, though it emerged as little more than a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The water form rippled in what might have been amusement. "Want? We don't want, we need. Integration. Adaptation. You humans carry genetic innovations our consciousness requires." It extended a liquid appendage toward me, the substance of its hand separating into tendrils that reached across the diminishing space. "Your species breached our domain with your marshland developments, your environmental sampling, your conservation efforts. You studied us without understanding what you observed. Now we study you from the inside." The first tendril touched my ankle, the sensation not wet as expected, but searing hot like acid. I kicked away, scrambling backward until my shoulders hit the sloped ceiling of the loft. Around me, the cabin groaned as structural supports weakened under the assault of the rising water. Through the small skylight above, I could see that night had fully fallen, the darkness absolute except for the pulsing glow emanating from my uninvited guests. The water form continued its approach, more deliberate now, its amorphous features arranging into something that grotesquely mimicked compassion. "Assimilation isn't painful once you surrender," it said, gesturing to the transformed humans still standing in perfect formation despite the water now reaching their chins. These disciples have joined our collective consciousness. Their memories, their knowledge, preserved and utilized. As if on cue, Garrett stepped forward, his movements jerky as though he were a marionette controlled by unseen strings. "It's peaceful, Vivian," he said, his voice clearer now, but utterly devoid of human inflection. "Like drifting in the womb again. Primordial. Complete." His skin had taken on a translucent quality, blue-green light visible through the thinning tissue. In desperation, I smashed the skylight with my flashlight and began clawing my way onto the roof, jagged glass slicing my hands as I pulled myself through the opening. The night air hit me like a physical force after the stifling atmosphere inside. I scrambled to the roof's peak, finally able to see the full extent of my situation. My cabin now an island in an endless expanse of glowing marsh water that stretched to the horizon. No lights of distant properties, no sign of the mainland that should have been visible to the east. It was as if the entire world had been submerged, leaving only this precarious perch above the waterline. The luminescence in the water intensified around my cabin, the surface churning as more figures emerged, dozens now, forming a perfect circle around my refuge. They began a rhythmic swaying, their movements creating waves that crashed against the cabin walls with increasing force. The structure shuddered beneath me with each impact. From my elevated position, I could see that the figures were generating those precise patterns I'd observed earlier, but on a massive scale, concentric circles, spirals, and complex interlocking designs that seemed to channel energy toward my location. The water rose faster now, climbing the exterior walls with unnatural purpose. I was contemplating my rapidly diminishing options when headlights cut through the darkness from the direction of what had been the access road, a large vehicle moving purposefully toward my property, somehow staying above the water's surface. As it drew closer, I could make out a modified swamp buggy with massive balloon tires and an elevated chassis. Behind the wheel was Lena, the real Lena this time, I desperately hoped, accompanied by two men in what appeared to be hazmat suits. The glowing figures in the water immediately reacted to their approach, abandoning their formation to converge on the incoming vehicle. "Vivian," Lena's voice carried across the water, amplified by some kind of loudspeaker system. "We're from the containment team. Don't touch the water. It's not water anymore." The swamp buggy plowed forward despite the entities attempting to climb its massive tires, some kind of electrical field visibly repelling them when they got too close. The vehicle pulled alongside my rapidly disintegrating cabin, extending a metal gangway toward the roof. "Jump for it," one of the suited men called, extending a gloved hand in my direction. "This whole structure is going down any second." I leapt across the gap just as a massive surge undermined what remained of the cabin's foundation. The gangway retracted with mechanical swiftness, nearly pitching me back into the hungry water below before the second technician caught my arm and pulled me to safety. As soon as I was aboard, Lena threw the vehicle into reverse, executing a tight turn away from my collapsing home. Through the reinforced windows, I watched as the cabin imploded, wooden beams snapping like twigs under the immense pressure. The water form rose from the destruction, its size now towering 30 feet above the surface, tendrils extending outward in our direction with frightening speed. "Hold on," Lena shouted as she activated some mechanism on the dashboard. A high-pitched whine filled the vehicle's interior, and a wave of energy pulsed outward from our position. The pursuing tendrils recoiled as if burned, the giant water form momentarily destabilizing before beginning to reform. "That won't hold them long," one of the technicians muttered, monitoring readings on a tablet. "Cellular cohesion is already adapting to the frequency." Lena nodded grimly, pushing the swamp buggy to its limits as we raced toward higher ground, the marsh entities following in a luminous wave that seemed to draw all light from the night sky into its mass. The swamp buggy crashed through the marsh at breakneck speed, its specialized tires finding purchase on submerged terrain that should have been impassable. Inside the cabin, one of the technicians, who introduced himself as Dr. Eli Chun, handed me a silver thermal blanket and a canteen of water that he insisted I drink completely. "It contains a neutralizing agent," he explained, watching carefully as I drained the metallic-tasting liquid. in case you've been exposed to the microorganisms. The second technician, a stern-faced woman named Rivera, was monitoring our pursuers through some kind of specialized scope mounted to the rear of the vehicle. "They're still coming," she reported, her voice clinically detached despite the tension evident in her posture. Multiple convergent patterns, primary mass approximately 40 meters behind and gaining. On cue, the vehicle shuddered as something massive struck its rear quarter. Lena cursed and adjusted our course, the buggy fishtailing wildly before regaining traction. "We need to reach the containment perimeter," she called over her shoulder. 7 minutes out if we can maintain speed." The look she exchanged with Rivera carried unspoken volumes about our chances of doing exactly that. Dr. Chun was examining my lacerated hands with a portable scanner that hummed softly as it passed over my skin. His expression grew increasingly concerned as he studied the readout. "Early-stage infiltration in the wound sites," he murmured to Rivera. "Penetration along capillary pathways." She nodded and retrieved an auto-injector from a case beside her seat, passing it to Chun without comment. He turned to me with practiced professional calm that did nothing to mask the urgency underneath. "This will slow the colonization process," he explained, pressing the device against my neck before I could object. Cold fire spread from the injection site, radiating outward until my entire body tingled uncomfortably. Around us, the marsh had transformed completely from the peaceful wetland I'd grown to love. The water glowed with that sickly luminescence, moving against natural currents in pursuit of our vehicle. Distorted faces formed briefly on the surface only to dissolve and reform elsewhere. Some I recognized from my 2 months in the area, others ancient-looking with hollow eyes and gaping mouths. The sky above had taken on the same greenish tinge, clouds swirling in patterns that mirrored those in the water below, as if the infection had spread to the atmosphere itself. "What are they?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding distant and distorted to my own ears, an effect of the injection, Chin assured me. Lena kept her eyes on the treacherous path ahead, but answered over the whine of the straining engine. "We call them the Collective. Microbial colony organisms with a hive consciousness, dormant in the deepest parts of the marsh for thousands of years. Indigenous tribes in this region had containment rituals that kept them isolated. When settlers drained portions of the wetlands for development, they disrupted those boundaries." She swerved violently to avoid a massive tendril that erupted from the water directly in our path. Rivera continued the explanation as she deployed another pulse from our defensive system, temporarily dispersing a wave of luminous matter that had been forming beside us. Every 30 years, their reproductive cycle reaches critical mass. They require complex DNA, human DNA, to evolve and expand their territory. The government established a research and containment facility after the 1964 incident when an entire community disappeared overnight. We track the cycle, evacuate vulnerable areas under various pretexts, and deploy countermeasures to force them back into dormancy. The implications hit me with nauseating force. "You knew this would happen? You let me move there knowing what was coming." The accusation hung in the air as Lena navigated a particularly treacherous section where fallen trees created a slalom course through steadily shallowing water. When she finally answered, her voice carried genuine regret. "Your arrival wasn't anticipated. This area was supposed to be cleared months ago. Garrett was our embedded observer, but he went silent 2 weeks before you purchased the property. By the time we realized an unauthorized civilian had moved in, the early warning signs had already begun. Extraction would have triggered premature awakening." Another impact rocked the vehicle, harder this time, nearly sending us rolling. Through the rear camera feed displayed on the dashboard, I could see our pursuer in full now. A massive wave of that luminous matter, shaped like a grasping hand that stretched nearly 30 feet into the air. Within its semi-transparent substance, human forms struggled like insects trapped in amber, their faces contorted in silent screams. "Perimeter in sight," Lena called, pointing toward a line of floodlights visible in the distance. 3 minutes. "Rivera, prepare the final pulse." Rivera's hands flew over a complex control panel, the whine of our defensive system climbing to a painful pitch as it charged to maximum capacity. "This will drain all remaining power," she warned. "One shot." Lena nodded grimly, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "On my mark," she said, eyes fixed on a point about halfway to the perimeter. We need them fully committed to the pursuit when we hit them. The swamp buggy lurched as Lena suddenly cut power, our momentum carrying us forward as the pursuing wave gained ground with terrifying speed. Now, Lena shouted just as the leading edge of the luminous mass threatened to engulf our vehicle. Rivera slammed her hand down on a red button, and the world turned white. The pulse that exploded outward was magnitude stronger than the previous ones, a visible shockwave that tore through the pursuing entity with devastating effect. The creature, for I could think of it as nothing else now, emitted a sound that defied description, a psychic shriek that bypassed my ears entirely and resonated directly in my brain. Through watering eyes, I watched it collapse like a wave breaking on shore, its cohesion temporarily shattered. With the last reserves of power, Lena restarted the engine and gunned it toward the perimeter. Behind us, the scattered luminescence was already beginning to regroup, flowing together with apparent purpose. "It's not enough," Chen said quietly, watching the reformation through a specialized filter on his tablet. "Collective consciousness remains intact. Full reconstitution in approximately 3 minutes." Lena swore under her breath, but kept her focus forward, the perimeter drawing closer with agonizing slowness. I could now make out figures moving along what appeared to be an elevated platform, manning equipment that dwarfed our vehicle. We breached the perimeter with less than a minute to spare, massive gates closing behind us as technicians in full containment suits swarmed our vehicle. Beyond the barrier, the reformed entity crashed against an invisible field that rippled with energy at each impact, holding firm despite the onslaught. I was hustled from the swamp buggy into a decontamination chamber, separated from my rescuers as automated systems cleaned every particle of marsh water from my body and clothing. Through observation windows, I could see similar procedures being performed on Lena, Chun, and Rivera. Hours later, cleared of immediate contamination but confined to a medical observation unit, I finally got the full explanation. The facility director, a severe woman named Dr. Hammond, showed me satellite imagery of the affected area, now a perfect circle 10 miles in diameter centered roughly on my former cabin. "The collective has grown considerably since the last cycle," she said, her tone suggesting professional interest rather than alarm. "Previous containment strategies will be insufficient for the next emergence in 2054. We're exploring more permanent solutions." When I asked about Garrett and the others who had been taken, Hammond's clinical detachment momentarily faltered. "Unfortunately, assimilation is irreversible after a certain point. Those you saw in the marsh are no longer human in any meaningful sense. Their consciousnesses have been absorbed into the collective, their bodies repurposed as vessels." She hesitated, then added with surprising gentleness, "They don't suffer, if that's any comfort. The human mind isn't equipped to remain intact within a hive consciousness of that magnitude. Identity dissolution occurs within hours of full immersion." I asked about the visible containment efforts, the energy barrier I'd seen, the reinforced perimeter, wondering aloud how such an operation remained secret in the modern age of satellite imagery and internet conspiracy theories. Hammond smiled thinly. "Who would believe it? We operate under the cover of an environmental research station studying marsh ecology. The few civilian witnesses who escape are either recruited, like Lena, or relocated with generous compensation packages and carefully constructed memories of natural disasters." Her gaze sharpened. "Which brings us to your situation, Ms. Reese. The facility became my home for the next 6 weeks, a sprawling underground complex beneath the innocent-looking research station above ground. My official status was quarantined observer, not quite prisoner, not quite guest, existing in a strange limbo while Hammond and her team debated my fate. Daily tests confirmed that the treatment had successfully neutralized the collective microorganisms that had begun colonizing my system, but the psychological evaluation was ongoing. "Exposure changes people," Dr. Chun explained during one of our sessions, "sometimes in ways that don't manifest immediately." From my restricted access point in the medical wing, I pieced together the facility's true purpose through careful observation and strategic questions to the rotating staff. The containment operation had existed since the 1960s, originally a military project before transferring to a specialized branch of what eventually became the Department of Homeland Security. The Marsh entity, the collective, had been studied across multiple awakening cycles, its behavior mapped and countermeasures developed, always with the primary goal of preventing wider public awareness of its existence. Lena visited when her duties allowed, her role as friendly face, obvious but welcome nonetheless. "I was like you once," she told me during one such visit, absent-mindedly rubbing a network of faint scars on her forearm that resembled the branching patterns I'd seen in the marsh. Field researchers studying indigenous plant knowledge, accidentally in the wrong place during the 2024 emergence. They saved me, recruited me. This is my second cycle on the containment team. When I asked if she ever regretted staying, her expression turned distant. The alternatives were worse. And once you know what's out there, ordinary life feels like a comforting lie. 3 options were eventually presented for my future. Recruitment into the containment team with extensive training and relocation to a different facility. Civilian resettlement with implanted memory modifications to replace my traumatic experiences with more benign explanations. Or a middle path, retention of my memories, but with a binding non-disclosure agreement and relocation to a monitored location. The decision would need to be made before the containment period ended and personnel rotated out, approximately 1 week from that final briefing. The choice should have been straightforward. Any rational person would accept the memory modification and return to normal life, unburdened by the knowledge that lurked beneath the peaceful surface of the world. Yet something held me back, perhaps the nurse in me that had spent decades bearing witness to trauma so others wouldn't face it alone, or maybe some deeper change the experience had worked in me. I found myself spending hours at the observation deck, watching the containment barrier where it held the luminous entity at bay. The sight should have filled me with horror, but increasingly, I felt something closer to fascination. It was during one such observation session that I first noticed the pattern, subtle variations in the luminescence that repeated at regular intervals, almost like a form of communication. I mentioned it to Chun during our next evaluation, expecting dismissal. Instead, his reaction was immediate and intense. Within hours, I found myself in Hammond's office, surrounded by senior researchers as I explained what I'd seen. "It's not random," I insisted, pointing to the time-lapse footage they'd hurriedly compiled. "Look at the intensity modulation. It has structure, rhythm. It's trying to communicate." The discovery accelerated my integration into the research team, my medical background proving unexpectedly valuable in understanding the quasi-biological nature of the collective. The entity wasn't simply destructive, it was adaptive, learning from each encounter with humanity, incorporating our knowledge through those it assimilated. The horror remained. It was still an existential threat that treated humans as resources rather than equals, but understanding brought a measure of control that fear alone couldn't provide. By deciphering its communication patterns, we hoped to predict its behavior and develop more effective containment strategies. 2 months into this work, the breakthrough came during a routine monitoring shift. The luminescent patterns shifted dramatically, forming shapes that resembled the symbolic language we'd been developing to communicate with it. On the observation deck, we watched in stunned silence as the entity arranged itself into a configuration we'd never seen before. Concentric rings surrounding a central spiral that pulsed with increasing intensity. Within that spiral, faces formed and dissolved, human features borrowed from its assimilated victims, mouths moving in synchronization as if trying to speak. "It wants to negotiate," Hammond said, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. The implications were staggering, not just for our facility, but for humanity's understanding of non-human intelligence. If the collective was truly sentient in a way we could meaningfully interact with, everything about our containment approach would need to be reevaluated. But if this was merely a more sophisticated mimicry designed to lower our defenses, the consequences of misinterpreting could be catastrophic. Hammond turned to me, her decision evident before she spoke. "You've shown the most intuitive understanding of its patterns. We need you on the communication team." The next week passed in a blur of activity as we prepared for the first attempted direct communication. A specialized interface was constructed, a contained pool of purified water connected to sensors that could translate electrical impulses into the light patterns we believed the entity used as language. I would be stationed at this interface, part translator and part diplomatic envoy to a consciousness so alien we barely had framework to comprehend it. The implications terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. The night before our scheduled attempt, I dreamed of the marsh for the first time since my rescue. In the dream, I stood at the water's edge, the surface perfectly still before me. From the depths rose not the horrifying water form I remembered, but a mirror image of myself, composed entirely of that luminous substance. "We are not what you believe us to be," it said, my own voice distorted as if speaking through water. "Older than your species, yes, but not your enemy. Convergent evolution has brought us to this moment," my luminous reflection continued. "Not as predator and prey, but as potential symbionts." I woke with a start, the dream lingering with unusual clarity. As I prepared for the communication attempt, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had been revealed, a perspective I hadn't considered. The interface chamber was a marvel of engineering, a perfect circle of specialized glass containing that purified water, surrounded by sensors and translation equipment. Hammond and the senior research team watched from an observation room as I took my position at the control panel. "Remember the protocols," Hammond's voice came through my earpiece. "No unscripted interactions. At the first sign of contamination, we terminate and purge the system." I nodded, but something inside me had already decided on a different course. When the containment field was partially lowered to allow a controlled sample of the entity to enter our interface pool, the water immediately took on that familiar luminescence. The patterns began forming. First the concentric circles we'd seen before, then more complex arrangements that our translation system struggled to interpret. "We're getting fragmented data," one of the technicians reported. "It's not following the expected communication schema." I studied the patterns, recognizing something in their flow that the computers couldn't capture. Without conscious decision, I placed my hand on the surface of the water. Alarms blared immediately. "Reese, withdraw," Hammond shouted through the comm system. "Security team, prepare for containment breach." But there was no pain, no acid-like burning as before. Instead, a profound stillness descended as the luminescence traveled up my arm in delicate branching patterns, stopping at my elbow. In my mind, understanding bloomed like a flower opening to sunlight. "They're not invaders," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos erupting around me. "They're refugees." Through this limited connection, the collective shared its true nature. Ancient consciousness that had once existed in perfect symbiosis with Earth's early life forms. A cosmic disaster had destroyed their original home, forcing them into dormancy in the deep marsh, awakening periodically to seek compatible hosts for survival. Their methods were frightening because our biology was so foreign to them, their attempts at communication misinterpreted as aggression. "The assimilation is real," I explained as security personnel surrounded me, weapons drawn. "But it was never meant to destroy. They were trying to preserve what they absorbed, creating living archives of each person, each consciousness." Hammond approached cautiously, scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "You're saying they don't want to replace us?" "They want to merge, to share knowledge and evolve together," I said. "But they need our help to do it properly. The 30-year cycle is their natural limitation. They can't sustain stable communion with human hosts without our willing participation." In the days that followed, everything changed. Under controlled conditions, other volunteers established limited connections with the entity. Each contact revealed more of its ancient history and true intentions. The partial merge left those of us who had connected subtly altered, branching patterns of luminescence visible beneath our skin in darkness, dreams filled with memories that weren't our own, yet somehow were. 1 year later, the containment facility had transformed into something unprecedented, a research center dedicated to controlled symbiosis between humanity and the collective. The marsh entity remained contained, but that containment had become collaborative rather than combative, allowing both species to learn from each other without fear. I had found my purpose as chief liaison between worlds, my medical background uniquely suited to monitoring the physiological changes in human volunteers who participated in controlled communion with the entity. The nightmares had stopped, replaced by shared consciousness experiences that expanded our understanding of both ourselves and the ancient intelligence we had feared for so long. Lena and I stood at the edge of the containment barrier one evening, watching the luminous patterns dance across the marsh surface, no longer random or threatening, but a complex language we were slowly learning to read. "Do you ever regret not taking the memory modification?" she asked, her own luminous patterns glowing faintly beneath her skin in the twilight. I considered the question carefully. The world still didn't know what lived in these wetlands, what potential and peril existed in the communion we were exploring. The weight of that knowledge remained heavy, the responsibility enormous. "No," I finally answered. "Some truths shouldn't be forgotten, even when they're difficult to bear." The patterns in the marsh shifted, forming that now familiar spiral that indicated acknowledgement. The entity was listening, always listening, not as the predator we had feared, but as something far more complex, a consciousness as old as life on Earth, seeking connection across an evolutionary divide that only courage and understanding could bridge. As darkness fell completely, the marsh glowed with that ethereal light, no longer ominous but filled with possibility. My own patterns responded, illuminating the network of fine lines that traced my forearms, the physical signature of my role as translator between worlds, neither fully human nor truly other, but something new and necessary. The research would continue, carefully and ethically, expanding our understanding of what consciousness truly meant and what forms it could take. There would be setbacks and breakthroughs, fear and wonder in equal measure. But the marshland had become a place of discovery rather than terror, its ancient resident no longer enemy, but teacher. In the end, the most valuable lesson was the simplest, that evolution's greatest power lies not in conquest, but in convergence, in finding common ground across seemingly unbridgeable differences. What began in fear had transformed into cautious hope, the beginning of a symbiosis that might one day change our understanding of what it means to be human. As I turned to leave, the patterns beneath my skin pulsed in harmony with those in the marsh, separate consciousnesses communicating across the divide. Rain pelts my face as I haul the last crate of supplies up the muddy trail to my cabin. I'm Gideon Strathmore, 34 years old, and this patch of forest in the Olympic Peninsula, Washington, is my new home. After years of city noise in Seattle, I craved silence, so I bought this land, 10 acres of dense evergreens and rocky cliffs near Forks. No neighbors, no Wi-Fi, just me and the wild. My only company's my dog, a scrappy mutt named Cal, and occasional visits from my sister, Mara, who thinks I'm nuts for ditching civilization. She's 29, a nurse with a sharp tongue, always texting me to come back to reality. I built this cabin myself. Logs, nails, sweat. It's got a wood stove, a rainwater tank, and a view of the Solduc River snaking through the trees. Feels like freedom, but there's a weight in the air tonight, something heavy. Cal's ears perk up as I unpack canned beans and a hunting knife. The forest hums with life, owls hooting, branches snapping under deer hooves. I tell myself it's just nature, but my gut twists. I've been here 3 weeks, and the solitude's already playing tricks. Last night, I swore I saw a light flicker deep in the woods, too steady to be a firefly. Probably just my eyes adjusting to the dark, right? I shake it off, stoke the fire. Mara's supposed to visit tomorrow, bringing her boyfriend, Theo, a quiet carpenter who's good with his hands but bad with words. I'm not thrilled about sharing my space, but she insisted, says I need human contact before I turn into a hermit. I laugh it off, but the quiet out here can feel oppressive. The cabin smells of pine and damp earth. I set up a small solar lantern, its glow casting jagged shadows on the walls. Cal whines, pacing by the door. I tell him to chill, but he's not usually this antsy. I grab my journal, scribbling notes about the day, chopped wood, checked the snares, fixed a leak in the roof. It's grounding, keeps me sane. But as I write, I notice the forest's gone silent. No owls, no rustling. Just the rain, steady and cold. I glance at Cal. His hackles are up. I tell myself it's a bear or a cougar passing through. Washington's wilds are full of them. Still, I check the bolt on the door. Twice. I unpack a photo of me and Mara from last Christmas. Her in a goofy reindeer sweater, me rolling my eyes. It's a reminder of why I'm out here, to strip life down to what matters. No bosses, no bills, just surviving on my terms. But as I hang the photo, I hear a low hum, like a distant engine. Odd, since the nearest road's miles away. I step onto the porch, scanning the trees. Nothing but darkness and rain. Cal growls, low and steady. I mutter to him, "You're freaking me out, buddy." The hum fades, but my pulse doesn't slow. Maybe it's just a plane overhead. Yeah, that's it. I head back inside, locking the door. The cabin's cozy, but it feels smaller tonight, like the walls are leaning in. I sip some instant coffee, bitter and lukewarm, and try to laugh at myself. I'm not some city slicker spooked by the woods. I've camped here dozens of times before moving out permanently. But as I settle into my cot, Cal curls up beside me, still tense. I tell him we're fine, but my hand rests on the hunting knife under my pillow, just in case. The rain keeps falling, a steady drum that should lull me to sleep. It doesn't. Morning breaks, gray and foggy. Mara and Theo are due by noon, so I busy myself with chores, splitting logs, checking the water filter. The forest feels alive again, birds chirping, but there's a lingering unease. I find a snare tripped, but no animal, just the wire snapped clean. Could have been a rabbit that got lucky, or something stronger. I push the thought away, focusing on the axe in my hand, the rhythm of chopping. Mara's voice echoes in my head, teasing me about going full mountain man. I smirk, but it fades when I notice Cal staring at the tree line, his tail still. I head to the river to refill my water jugs. The Sol Duke's fast today, churning over rocks. I kneel, filling the first jug, when I spot something across the bank. A pile of stones stacked in a perfect pyramid. Not natural. My stomach lurches. Kids don't hike out here. It's too remote. I tell myself it's nothing, maybe some old camper's art project. But as I lug the water back, I can't shake the feeling I'm being watched. Cal stays close, his nose twitching. I mutter, "You're supposed to be the brave one, pal." By noon, I hear Mara's truck crunching up the dirt path. She hops out, all smiles, her curly hair tied back. Theo follows, lugging a cooler, his flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows. Mara hugs me, joking about my hobo beard. Theo nods, quiet as ever, but his eyes dart to the woods. "Nice spot," he says, voice tight. I shrug it off. City folks always get jumpy out here. We unload their gear, and Mara starts babbling about her hospital shifts. I'm half listening, my eyes on the trees. That stone pyramid's still on my mind. As we sit on the porch, sipping Mara's homemade lemonade, I catch Theo staring at the same spot Cal was fixated on earlier. He doesn't say anything, but his knuckles are wide around his glass. Mara's oblivious, planning a hike for tomorrow. I nod along, but my gut's screaming something's off. The forest feels too still again, like it's holding its breath. Cal's at my feet, growling softly. I tell myself it's just the three of us out here. Just us and the wild. But as the fog thickens, I'm not so sure. Mara's laughter echoes as she tosses a stick for Cal, but I'm distracted, scanning the fog-draped trees. The Olympic Peninsula's known for its moody weather, but this mist feels heavy, like it's hiding something. I shake it off, helping Theo unload firewood from the truck. He's still quiet, but his hands shake slightly as he stacks logs. I ask if he's okay, and he mumbles about a long drive. Fair enough. Forks to here is a haul, all winding roads and no cell signal. Still, his eyes keep flicking to the woods, same as Cal's. I don't push it, but the air feels charged, like before a storm. We head inside to cook dinner, venison stew from a deer I bagged last week. Mara's teasing me about my survivalist vibes, but I notice she's sticking close to the cabin. Cal's pacing again, ignoring his food bowl. I try to focus on the stew's savory smell, but that stone pyramid by the river's nagging me. I mention it casually, expecting Mara to laugh it off. Instead, Theo freezes mid-stir and asks, "How big was it?" His voice is sharp, not like him. I describe the foot-high stack, and he just nods, looking paler than before. After dinner, we play cards by lantern light. Mara's winning, as usual, trash-talking like we're kids again. But the mood shifts when Cal bolts to the door, barking low and fierce. I grab my flashlight, heart thumping. Probably just a raccoon, I say, but my voice sounds thin. Outside, the beam catches nothing but trees and fog. Then I spot it, another stone pile, this one closer, maybe 50 yards from the cabin. My stomach drops. I didn't see it earlier when I was chopping wood. Mara's behind me, whispering, "What the hell's that?" Theo stays silent, gripping his axe. I decide we should check the perimeter just to ease my mind. Mara protests, saying it's late, but Theo's already grabbing his jacket. We trek around the cabin, flashlights slicing through the mist. The forest's too quiet again, no crickets, no wind. I show them the first pyramid by the river, still intact. Theo kneels, studying it like it's evidence. Someone's been out here, he mutters. I want to argue, nobody hikes this deep, but the snapped snare from yesterday flashes in my mind. Maybe it wasn't an animal. Back at the cabin, we lock the door and try to laugh it off. Mara jokes about Bigfoot architects, but her eyes are wide. I suggest setting up a trail cam tomorrow to catch whatever's messing around. Theo agrees too quickly, like he's been thinking the same thing. We decide to take turns keeping watch tonight, just in case. I volunteer first, sitting by the window with my rifle across my lap. The fog's thicker now, swallowing the trees. Cal's beside me, growling at nothing. Or something. Around midnight, I hear it again. That low hum, like an engine but softer, pulsing. It's closer than last night, maybe a quarter-mile off. I wake Theo, who's half asleep on the couch. He listens, face tight, and says it sounds like a generator. But who'd run one out here? No one's supposed to be within miles. We debate hiking out to check, but Mara's asleep, and splitting up feels like a bad call. I scribble in my journal. Hum again. Stones. Not alone. My hands shaking as I write. Morning comes, gray and damp. Theo's up early, rigging the trail cam near the second stone pile. He's methodical, like he's done this before, but he won't meet my eyes. Mara's quieter too, sipping coffee and staring out the window. I suggest a hike to clear our heads, maybe check the snares. They agree, but there's tension, like we're all waiting for something to break. As we gear up, I notice Cal's limping slightly, favoring his front paw. I check it. Nothing's stuck, but there's a faint burn mark, like he brushed something hot. My pulse spikes. What could have done that? We head out, sticking close. The trail's muddy, and I spot fresh boot prints, too big to be ours. My heart's racing now. I point them out, and Mara curses under her breath. Theo kneels again, tracing the tread with his finger. Not old, he says. Maybe a day. I try to stay calm, saying it could be a lost hiker, but deep down, I know better. This far out, people don't just wander. We keep moving, but I'm gripping my knife tighter, eyes darting to every shadow. At the snare line, another one snapped, the wire twisted like someone yanked it hard. No blood, no fur, just clean breaks. Mara's voice shakes as she asks if we should head back. I want to agree, but we need to know what's out here. Theo's staring at the trees, his jaw set. We're not alone, he says, barely a whisper. Cal's hackles are up, and that hum starts again, faint but growing. It's coming from deeper in the woods, where the fog's thickest. My skin crawls, and I realize this isn't just some prank. Something's wrong out here, something disturbing. The hum grows louder, vibrating in my chest as we stand frozen on the trail. Cal's growling, ears flat, and Mara's gripping my arm so tight it hurts. Theo's eyes are locked on the fog, his axe raised like he's expecting something to lunge out. The Olympic Peninsula's dense forest feels like a trap now, the evergreens looming like silent judges. I whisper we should head back to the cabin, but Theo shakes his head. We need to see what's out there, he says, voice low. I want to argue, but those boot prints and snapped snares are burning in my mind. Something's stalking us, and it's not just some lost hiker. My gut's screaming this is bad, really bad. We creep forward, following the hum. It's not a generator. It's too uneven, almost alive, like a swarm of bees trapped in a metal box. The fog's so thick I can barely see 10 feet ahead. Mara's breathing hard, muttering about how we're idiots for not turning back. I shush her, but I'm sweating despite the chill. Cal stays close, his limp worse now, that burn mark on his paw looking raw. I keep my knife out, its weight grounding me. We find another stone pile, this one bigger, with a stick jammed in the center like a crude flag. My heart slams against my ribs. This feels deliberate, like a message. Theo stops, pointing at the ground. More boot prints, fresh, circling the stone pile. But there's something else, smears of ash, like someone burned a pile of papers and scattered the remains. I kneel, touching the gray dust. It's still warm. My stomach lurches. This wasn't here yesterday, I say, voice cracking. Mara's eyes are wide, her nurse instincts kicking in. We need to get Cal to the cabin, check his paw properly, she says. but she's staring at the ash like it's cursed. Theo's silent, scanning the trees. Then the hum cuts off, sharp, like someone flipped a switch. The silence is worse. We keep moving, slower now. The trail narrows, branches clawing at my jacket. I'm thinking of horror movies. Mara and I used to watch the Blair Witch Project, laughing at the stick figures. This isn't funny. It's real, and it's disturbing. We reach a clearing, and my breath catches. There's a structure, half hidden in the fog. A rusted metal box, maybe 3 feet tall, bolted to a concrete slab. It's got no wires, no markings, just a faint red glow pulsing from a crack in its side. Cal barks, sharp and panicked. Theo steps closer, but I grab his arm. "Don't," I hiss. Something about that box feels wrong, like it's watching us. Mara's whispering prayers now, her tough girl act gone. I'm trying to stay calm, but my hands are shaking. The air smells sharp, like ozone after lightning. Theo pulls free, inching toward the box. "It's warm," he says, not touching it, but close enough to make me nervous. Then we hear it, a low, guttural sound, not quite human, from the trees behind us. Cal's fur bristles, and he lunges forward, barking wildly. I yank his collar, heart pounding. "We're leaving," I say, but Theo's still staring at the box, like he's hypnotized. The sound comes again, closer, and it's not an animal. It's deliberate, mocking. We back away, eyes on the trees. The fog swirls, and for a second, I swear I see a figure. Tall, too thin, moving wrong. It's gone before I can blink, but Mara saw it too. Her face is ghost white. "Gideon, what the hell was that?" she whispers. I don't answer, just pull her toward the trail. Theo's reluctant, glancing back at the box like it's calling him. I snap at him to move, and he finally does, but his face is blank, like he's not all there. The guttural sound follows us, fading in and out, like whatever's out there is toying with us. We're halfway to the cabin when Cal stops, snarling at something off the path. I shine my flashlight, and my blood runs cold. Another stone pile, fresh, with a scrap of fabric caught in it, blue flannel, like Theo's shirt. He checks his sleeve, confused. It's intact. "That's not mine," he says, but his voice is shaky. Mara's crying now, quiet but steady. I'm trying to hold it together, but this is beyond creepy. It's terrifying. The hum starts again, louder, coming from the direction of the cabin. My heart sinks. Whatever's out here, it's circling us, closing in. I tell everyone to stay close, but Theo's acting weird, lagging behind, muttering about the box. "It's important," he says, like he's in a trance. I grab his shoulder, shaking him. "Snap out of it." I yell, louder than I mean to. He blinks, like waking up, but his eyes are glassy. Mara's clutching Cal, who's trembling now, his paw worse. The forest feels alive, watching us, and every step toward the cabin feels like wading through quicksand. The guttural sound echoes again, closer, from multiple directions. We're not alone, and whatever's out there isn't human. I'm gripping my knife so hard my knuckles ache. The cabin's in sight now, its outline faint through the fog. But there's something new, a faint glow, like the one from the box, pulsing near my porch. My stomach twists. Do we lead it back? Or was it waiting? Mara's sobbing, Theo's barely with us, and Cal's growling like he's ready to fight. The hum's deafening now, rattling my teeth. Something's clearly wrong, and it's not just the stones or the sounds. It's the air, the forest, us. We're in deep, and I don't know if the cabin's safe anymore. The glow pulses brighter near the cabin, a sickly red that makes my skin crawl. Cal's snarling, Mara's sobbing, and Theo's stumbling like he's drunk, muttering about that damn metal box. The hum's so loud it's shaking the ground, and the guttural sounds are everywhere, closing in. I grab Mara's arm, yelling, "We're getting out now." The Olympic Peninsula's no longer my sanctuary. It's a nightmare. My truck's parked 100 yards down the trail, our only shot. I shove Theo forward, but he's sluggish, eyes glassy. "Move!" I scream, my voice raw. The fog's choking, but I can make out the path. We just have to run. Cal's limping bad, his burned paw barely touching the ground, but he keeps pace, teeth bared. Mara's clutching my rifle, hands shaking so hard I'm worried she'll drop it. I've got my knife, useless against whatever's out there, but it's all I've got. The guttural sounds turn to sharp, barking cries, like a pack of coyotes, but wrong. Too human, too deliberate. I glance back and see shapes in the fog, tall and jerky, moving like puppets with cut strings. My heart's hammering. I tell Mara to focus on the truck, but she's hyperventilating, muttering about hospital shifts to calm herself. It's not working. We're halfway to the truck when Theo stops dead, staring at a new stone pile, this one topped with a deer skull, antlers gleaming in my flashlight's beam. It's calling me, he whispers, stepping toward it. I grab his collar, yanking him back. Theo, snap out of it. I shout, but he shoves me hard. His strength catches me off guard, and I stumble into Mara. She screams, dropping the rifle. It clatters into the mud, and those barking cries get louder, closer. Cal lunges at something I can't see, his barks turning to yelps. I scramble for the rifle, hands slick with sweat, and fire a shot into the fog. The noise buys us a second, but the shapes don't stop. I drag Theo, who's fighting me now, his eyes wild. We have to go back, he yells, like the forest got him under a spell. Mara's screaming his name, begging him to run. I don't have time to argue. I sling the rifle over my shoulder and haul him toward the truck. The hum's deafening, vibrating in my bones, and the red glow's following us, flickering through the trees. I spot the truck's outline, keys still in my pocket. Thank God for small miracles. But Cal's falling behind, his limp worse, and I hear a sickening crunch, like bone snapping. My stomach lurches, he's not barking anymore. We reach the truck, and I shove Mara into the passenger seat. Theo's thrashing, yelling about the box, how it needs us. I slam the door on him, locking it, and jump in the driver's side. The engine sputters. Damn it, the battery's old, but it catches. Headlights cut through the fog, and for a split second, I see them. 3 figures, 2 tall, limbs bent wrong, standing just beyond the light. Their faces are blank, like smudged clay, but their eyes glow red, matching the pulse. Mara screams, and I floor it, tires spinning in the mud. The figures don't chase, they just watch, and that's worse. The trail's a mess, branches scraping the truck's sides. Theo's pounding the window, screaming to turn back. I ignore him, gripping the wheel so tight my hands ache. Mara's crying, asking about Cal. I can't answer, my throat's too tight. I picture him out there, alone, maybe dead. The hum fades as we gain distance, but those barking cries echo in my head, like they're burned into my brain. I glance in the rearview mirror and see the red glow pulsing faintly, like it's tracking us. My heart's racing. This is life or death, and I'm barely holding it together. We hit a pothole, and the truck lurches. Theo's quiet now, slumped in the back, muttering to himself. Mara's trying to call 911, but there's no signal out here. I'm aiming for Forks, the nearest town, but the road's barely a path, and the fog's thicker than ever. I remember a story from Seattle News. A hiker went missing near here last year, found weeks later, babbling about lights in the woods. I thought it was drugs or delirium. Now I'm not so sure. The rifle's between my legs, but it feels useless against whatever's out there. The air's heavy, oppressive, like the forest itself is fighting us. A mile from the cabin, the engine stalls. I curse, turning the key, but nothing happens. The hum's back, closer, and the red glow lights up the fog behind us. Mara's sobbing. We're gonna die, Gideon. I want to tell her we're fine, but I can't lie. Theo's silent, staring out the window like he's waiting for something. I grab the rifle, kick the door open, and yell for them to run. Mara hesitates, but I pull her out. Theo follows, moving like a sleepwalker. The barking cries are right behind us now, and I hear footsteps. Not human, too fast, too heavy. We're running blind, the glow chasing us. I don't know how far we've gone when I see a light ahead. Not red, but white, like a flashlight. It's bouncing, like someone's running toward us. I shout, hoping it's help, but the barking cries drown me out. Mara's gasping, tripping over roots. Theo's lagging, and I realize he's not running from the figures. He's looking back, like he wants to go to them. My legs burn, my lungs scream, but I keep dragging Mara. The white light's closer, and I hear a voice yelling our names. It's familiar, but my mind's too scrambled to place it. The red glow's right behind us, and I know we're out of time. The white light's a ranger, his flashlight cutting through the fog. Gideon. Mara, he shouts. Ranger Ellis, a grizzled guy I met when I bought the land. He's got a shotgun, and he's waving us toward his Jeep, parked off the trail. I'm gasping, dragging Mara, but Theo's stopped, staring into the fog where the red glow pulses. Theo moved. I yell, but he's frozen, muttering, "They need me." The barking cries are deafening, and those figures are close. I see their warped silhouettes. Ellis fires a shot into the trees, and the cries falter, but only for a second. I shove Mara toward the jeep, but Theo bolts the wrong way, back toward the glow. I scream for him, but he's gone, swallowed by the fog. Mara's hysterical, clawing at me to go after him. Ellis grabs her, yelling, "We can't stay." My heart's tearing in half. I want to save Theo, but the figures are closing in, their red eyes locked on us. I make a split-second choice, the kind that haunts you forever. I push Mara into the jeep and climb in. Ellis floors it, the tires screaming on the gravel. The red glow fades behind us, but those barking cries follow, echoing like a curse. Mara's sobbing. "You left him," and I can't look at her. I know I screwed up. The jeep barrels toward Forks, the fog thinning as we hit paved road. Ellis is radioing for backup, his voice steady but tight. He says he's seen weird stuff out here. Missing hikers, strange lights, but nothing like this. I'm shaking, picturing Theo's face, those glassy eyes. Mara's curled up, whispering, "He's gone, he's gone." I want to comfort her, but guilt's choking me. I keep seeing Cal's limp, that deer skull, the ash piles. Whatever's out there, it's not just some cult or prank. It's something older, hungrier. The horror of it sinks into my bones. We reach Forks at dawn, the town's sleepy lights a lifeline. Ellis drops us at the police station, where we're met with skeptical cops and bad coffee. I tell them about the box, the figures, the glow, but their eyes glaze over. Mara's too broken to talk, just clutching a photo of her and Theo from her wallet. I remember a news story about a cult in Washington's backwoods, back in the 80s. People vanishing, found raving about lights that speak. The cops brushed it off then, too. My mistake was thinking we could outrun it, that leaving Theo was the only way. I was wrong. The cops organize a search party, but the fog's still thick, and they find nothing. No Theo, no box, no stone piles. It's like the forest swallowed the evidence. Mara won't speak to me, her eyes hollow. I keep replaying that moment I let Theo go, how I didn't fight harder. The hum's gone, but I hear it in my head, a constant reminder of what we faced. Ellis pulls me aside, says he's heard whispers of something ancient in these woods, something that marks people. I think of Cal's burned paw, Theo's trance. Did I bring this on us by moving out here? Days pass, and Mara leaves for Seattle, refusing to look at me. I'm back at the cabin, against everyone's advice, because I can't let it go. The stone piles are gone, the box vanished, but the air's still heavy, like it's waiting. I find Cal's collar in the mud, scorched black. My heart breaks all over again. I'm not sleeping, jumping at every noise. Last night, I saw a red glow in the distance, faint but there. It's not over. I keep my rifle loaded, but deep down, I know it's useless. Whatever's out here, it's patient. I'm writing this in my journal, hands shaking, because I need someone to know. The cops think I'm crazy, Mara hates me, and Theo's gone. Maybe dead, maybe worse. I made a deadly mistake, thinking I could live out here without paying a price. The Olympic Peninsula's wild, but it's not empty. Something's watching, and it's not done with me. I hear those barking cries at night, closer each time. I'm not sure if I'm paranoid or if I'm next. The fog's rolling in again, and I swear I see shapes moving in it. I keep thinking about Theo, how he ran toward the glow, like he wanted it. Was it the box, the forest, or something inside him? I'll never know. Mara's last words to me were, "You should have died instead." She's right. I chose wrong, and now I'm alone, trapped in this horror. The cabin feels like a cage, but I can't leave. Not yet. I need answers, even if they kill me. The hum's starting again, faint, from the river. It's calling. I check the locks, load another round, and sit by the window. The red glows brighter tonight, pulsing like a heartbeat. I'm not running this time, but I'm scared, more than I've ever been. The forest's alive, and it's angry. I think of Mara, Cal, Theo, and what I've lost. This place was supposed to be my escape, but it's a trap. Something's coming, and I don't know if I'll survive it. The barking cries are back, right outside. They're not human. They're here. Rain's dripping through the pines as I stack firewood outside my cabin in the Methow Valley, Washington, near Winthrop. I'm Tessa Varn, 38 years old, and this is my escape from the chaos of Spokane's newsrooms. I was a journalist, burned out on deadlines and bad coffee, so I traded it for this. 5 acres of forest, a wood stove, and a view of the Methow River. No internet, no neighbors, just me and my old typewriter. My brother, Callum, 33, a park ranger with a knack for fixing things, is due tomorrow with his buddy, Elise, a 29-year-old botanist who's always got dirt under her nails. They're my only link to the outside, and I'm still getting used to their visits interrupting my quiet. The cabin's small but sturdy, built by the previous owner, with a loft for sleeping and a propane lamp that casts a warm glow. I'm unpacking a crate of supplies, flour, matches, a new axe, when I notice the air's too still. The Methow Valley's wild, all rolling hills and thick firs, but tonight it feels like the forest's holding its breath. I shake it off, blaming my city nerves. Callum's always teasing me about jumping at shadows, but I'm no rookie. I've camped here for years. Still, I check the doors locked twice before sitting down to type. I'm working on a novel, something to keep my mind busy, but the keys stick, and my thoughts wander. Last night, I found a weird patch of ground near the river. Charred, like someone had a fire, but the ash was oily, not like wood. I figured it was old campers, but it's been nagging me. I jotted in my notebook, check burn site tomorrow. The typewriter's clack is the only sound, and it's comforting, like a heartbeat. But as I type, I hear a faint hum, low and steady, like a distant machine. My pulse picks up. There's no roads for miles. I step onto the porch, flashlight in hand, scanning the trees. The hum's gone, but the air smells wrong, sharp, like chemicals. I tell myself it's just the river, maybe some runoff from a distant farm. But my gut's twisting. I think of a story I covered in Spokane, loggers finding strange burn marks in the woods, then quitting without explanation. I laughed it off then, but now I'm not so sure. Back inside, I bolt the door and grab my notebook, sketching the burn site from memory. It's a habit, document everything, like I'm still chasing a scoop. Callum's truck rolls in tomorrow, so I busy myself with chores, chopping wood, checking the water filter. The river's high, rushing over rocks, and I spot another burn mark, smaller, near my usual fishing spot. My heart skips. It's fresh, the ground still warm. I kneel, touching the oily ash, and my fingers sting, like I brushed nettles. I wipe them fast, but my skin's red, irritated. Probably just a reaction, I tell myself, but I'm spooked. The forest's too quiet. No owls, no rustling. I head back, gripping my axe tighter than I need to. Inside, I sip tea, trying to calm down. The cabin smells of cedar and damp earth, but that chemical tang lingers, like it's stuck in my nose. I think of Callum and Elise, how they'll bring noise and normalcy tomorrow. Callum's probably got a new story about drunk campers, and Elise will be rattling off plant names like a textbook. But as I settle into my chair, I hear it again, the hum, louder, coming from the river. I freeze, listening. It's not a machine, not quite. It's too organic, like a swarm of insects. My hands shake as I check the window. Nothing but darkness. Morning breaks, gray and misty. I'm up early, hauling water from the river. The burn mark's still there, and now there's a faint trail of ash leading into the trees. My stomach churns. I tell myself it's nothing, maybe kids messing around, but Winthrop's too far for that. Callum's truck crunches up the trail by noon, and I force a smile as he hops out, his ranger hat crooked. Elise follows, her backpack stuffed with notebooks, already eyeing the ferns. Nice setup, Tessa, Callum says, but his grin fades when he sees my face. You okay, he asks. I shrug, not ready to mention the hum or the ash. We sit on the porch, drinking coffee from my thermos. Elise is sketching a leaf, her pencil scratching softly, while Callum checks my axe, joking about my lumberjack face. I try to laugh, but I keep glancing at the trees. That chemical smells back, stronger, and I notice Elise sniffing the air, her brow furrowed. Something's off, she says, quiet enough that Callum doesn't hear. I nod, my heart racing. I mention the burn marks, keeping my voice light, but Callum's eyes narrow. Show us, he says, grabbing his flashlight. I hesitate, but we head out, the forest feeling smaller, tighter, like it's watching. At the river, The ash trails longer, snaking deeper into the woods. Callum kneels, touching it, and pulls his hand back fast, cursing. "That burns," he says, his fingers red like mine. Elise is staring at the trees, her sketchpad forgotten. "There's something out there," she whispers, pointing to a faint glow, greenish, flickering in the mist. My pulse spikes. It's not a campfire, not lightning. It's wrong, unsettling, like the hum. Callum's trying to joke, saying it's just swamp gas, but his voice is tight. The forest's too still, and I know we're not alone. Something's out here, and it's starting to scare me. I'm kneeling by the truck with Leland, staring at the severed wires. The cuts are clean, like someone used a blade, not chewed by an animal. My stomach's in knots. This is no prank. The North Cascades are remote, but this feels personal, like someone's toying with us. Leland's cursing under his breath, his toolbox open as he tries to patch the wires. Sadie's inside, still spooked, and I keep glancing at the cabin to make sure she's okay. The forest's too quiet, the air thick with that metallic smell again. I mention the scratches on the tree, and Leland's jaw tightens. "Show me," he says, grabbing his flashlight. My heart's pounding, but I nod. We head to the creek, leaving Sadie with strict orders to stay inside and lock the door. The tree's marks are worse. 3 deep gashes, now joined by a 4th, fresh and glistening with sap. Leland touches one, his face grim. "This ain't no bear," he mutters. I agree, but I don't say it out loud. My mind flashes to a news story from Tacoma. A hiker found near here last summer, raving about cuts that move. They called him crazy, locked him up. I shake it off, but the memory's like a splinter in my brain. Leland suggests checking the perimeter, and I grab my shotgun, just in case. Back at the cabin, Sadie's glued to the window, her sketchpad abandoned. "It moved again," she whispers, pointing to the trees. I scan the forest, but it's just shadows and mist. Still, her fear's contagious, and my skin's crawling. Leland's rigging a makeshift alarm with fishing line and bells around the cabin, something he learned camping as a kid. I try to lighten the mood, joking about his MacGyver skills, but my laugh's hollow. The bells jingle faintly, even though there's no wind. My pulse spikes. "Breeze, maybe," I say, but Leland's eyes meet mine. We both know better. We decide to stay inside tonight, no more wandering. I cook soup, canned tomatoes and herbs from my garden, but the smell doesn't comfort me like usual. Sadie's quiet, picking at her food, and Leland's checking the windows every 5 minutes. I notice my radio's gone silent. No static, just dead air. I fiddle with it, but nothing comes through. Storm's messing with it, I tell Sadie, but her eyes are fixed outside, like she's waiting for something. I follow her gaze and see a faint glow, pale blue, flickering deep in the trees. My heart skips. It's not lightning. I grab my flashlight, but Leland stops me. "Don't go out there, Nora," he says, his voice low. He's right, but that glow's pulling at me like a hook in my chest. I think of those scratches, the truck, the tapping last night. It's all connected, and it's disturbing. We agree to keep watching shifts, me first. I sit by the window, shotgun across my lap. The bells outside silent now. Sadie's curled up on the couch, clutching her owl sketch. Leland's pacing, his pocket knife flipping open and shut. The glow's still there, pulsing faintly, like it's breathing. Around midnight, the bells jingle, sharp, urgent. I bolt upright, waking Leland. Sadie's eyes snap open, terrified. We peer outside, but the fog's rolled in, thick and gray. The glow's brighter, closer, maybe 100 yards out. My hands are sweaty on the shotgun. Could be an animal. I whisper, but then we hear it. A low, scraping sound, like metal dragging on stone. It's not natural, and it's coming from the creek. Leland grabs his flashlight, but I stop him. We stay put. I say, my voice shaking. The scraping stops, but the silence is worse, heavy with dread. Morning comes, gray and cold. The glow's gone, but the bells are tangled, like something big pushed through. I check the creek with Leland, Sadie trailing behind despite my protests. The scratched tree's worse, more gashes, forming a pattern, like a spiral. My stomach churns. Leland finds something else, a small metal disc, half buried in the mud, etched with strange symbols. It's warm to the touch, and I drop it like it burned me. What the hell's this? I ask, but Leland's face is pale. He's thinking what I'm thinking. Someone's out here, and they're not friendly. We head back, deciding to set up more alarms and check the truck again. Leland's almost got it running, but he's jumpy, glancing at the trees. Sadie's sketching the disc symbols, her hands shaking. I try to keep things normal, talking about her bird drawings, but she's distant, saying, "It's watching us." I want to reassure her, but I feel it too. That prickling sense of eyes on us. The forest's too still, the metallic smell stronger. I think of that hiker's story again, his ramblings about marks that follow. It's starting to feel too real. By noon, the truck's fixed, but Leland suggests we hike to higher ground, get a better view of the area. I'm torn. Stay safe in the cabin or figure out what's going on. Sadie's scared but insists on coming. She's tougher than she looks. We pack light, water, knives, the shotgun, and head out. The trail's muddy, and I spot fresh tracks, not boots but deep, claw-like gouges. My heart's racing. The scraping sound starts again, faint but closer, from the direction of the glow last night. Whatever's out here, it's not hiding anymore, and it's scaring the hell out of me. The scraping sound grows louder, echoing through the fog as we hike up the trail. My heart's pounding, shotgun heavy in my hands. Leland's leading, his flashlight cutting through the mist, while Sadie sticks close, her sketch pad clutched like a shield. The North Cascades feel alive, the trees looming like they're closing in. Those claw-like tracks we saw earlier are fresh, crisscrossing the path, and I can't shake the feeling we're being herded. I whisper to Leland to slow down, but he's focused, muttering about finding the source of that glow. Sadie's eyes are wide, scanning the woods. Something's out there, and it's not just a bear or a prankster. It's something disturbing. We reach a rocky outcrop, the trail leveling off. The scraping stops, replaced by a low buzz, like static from a broken radio. It's coming from below, near the creek. I peer over the edge and freeze. A faint blue glow pulses in a clearing emanating from a pile of rocks, not natural, arranged in a tight spiral. It's like the tree scratches, deliberate and wrong. Leland kneels, shining his light, and we see it. Another metal disc, bigger, embedded in the ground, its symbols glowing faintly. My stomach twists. "Nora, this ain't right," Leland says, his voice barely a whisper. Sadie's trembling, sketching the symbols like it's keeping her sane. I tell them to stay back, but the buzz spikes, sharp enough to make my teeth ache. Sadie gasps, pointing at the trees. There's movement, something tall, hunched, slipping between the firs. It's not human, not animal, its limbs too long, moving like a spider but upright. My heart's in my throat. I raise the shotgun, but it's gone before I can aim. Leland's cursing, gripping his knife, and Sadie's whispering, "It saw me." I want to tell her it's okay, but the air's heavy, like it's pressing us down. This is horror, raw and real, and it's targeting us. We back away, keeping the glow in sight. The buzz is constant now, vibrating in my chest. I think of a documentary I saw about old mining sites in Washington, strange equipment left behind, unexplained disappearances. This feels like that, but worse, like something ancient woke up. The spiral of rocks shifts slightly, stones rolling without wind. Sadie screams, and I grab her, my hands shaking. Leland's shouting to head back to the cabin, but the trail behind us is different. More tracks, fresh, leading off into the fog. My pulse races. Did we take a wrong turn, or is something messing with the path? The figure appears again, closer, maybe 50 yards away. Its head tilts, like it's studying us, and I see a glint. Eyes, maybe, or something metallic. My shotgun's up, but my hands are sweaty, and I'm not sure I can shoot straight. Leland's yelling at it, waving his knife, but it doesn't move, just watches. Sadie's crying, clutching my arm. "It's not right," she sobs, and she's dead on. This thing's not natural. The buzz spikes again, and the disc in the ground pulses brighter, like it's responding. I fire a warning shot into the air, and the figure slips back into the trees, but the buzz doesn't stop. We turn to run, but the trail's a maze now, fog twisting the trees into unfamiliar shapes. I'm trying to stay calm, but my mind's screaming. This is a trap. Leland's leading, but he's jumpy, checking over his shoulder every step. Sadie's clutching her sketch pad, muttering about the symbols, how they move when she looks away. I glance at her drawings, and my blood runs cold. The spirals match the rocks, the tree scratches, even the tracks. It's like she's channeling whatever's out here. I tell her to stop, but she's frantic, sketching faster. The buzz is louder, closer, like it's inside my head. We find another disc, half buried under roots, its glow pulsing in time with the first. Leland kneels, reaching for it, but I grab his arm. "Don't touch it," I snap, remembering how the smaller disc felt hot, alive. He pulls back, but his eyes are glassy, like he's fighting something. The scraping starts again, from all directions, like metal claws on stone. I swing the shotgun around, but there's nothing to aim at, just fog and shadows. The figure's back, joined by another, their silhouettes flickering like bad TV static. My heart's hammering. They're circling us, and it's terrifying. I drag Sadie behind me, yelling at Leland to keep moving. He's sluggish, muttering about the glow, how it knows us. My stomach lurches. He sounds like that hiker from the news, the one who went mad. The cabin's our only hope, but the trail's looping, leading us back to the spiral of rocks. The buzz is deafening, and Sadie's crying, saying the symbols are in her head. I'm gripping the shotgun so tight my knuckles hurt. The figures are closer, their movements jerky, like they're not fully here. One steps into the light, and I see it. A face, not human, carved with those same symbols, glowing blue. We're running now, branches tearing at my jacket. The cabin's nowhere in sight, and the fog's so thick I can barely breathe. Leland's lagging, staring at the discs like they're calling him. Sadie's screaming, her sketchpad dropped in the mud, pages torn with frantic spirals. The scraping's right behind us, and I hear a new sound, a low, guttural chant, like voices but not human. My skin crawls. Something's clearly wrong, worse than I imagined. The forest isn't just alive, it's hunting us, and I don't know if we can outrun it. The guttural chant echoes through the fog, mixing with the buzz that's rattling my skull. I'm dragging Sadie, her legs stumbling, while Leland's falling behind, his eyes locked on the glowing disc in the ground. The figures, those carved, glowing things, are closing in, their jerky movements like glitches in reality. My shotgun's heavy, but I keep it raised, heart pounding so hard I can barely think. The North Cascades have turned on us, the forest a maze of fog and terror. Run for the cabin. I yell, my voice raw. The truck's our best shot, but it's a mile off, and Leland's acting possessed, muttering about the symbols. Sadie's sobbing. They're in my head, and I know we're in deep. We sprint through the trees, branches clawing my face. The chant's louder, like a chorus of broken machines, and the blue glow pulses behind us, lighting up the fog. I glance back. 3 figures now, their carved faces glowing, moving too fast. Sadie trips, and I haul her up, my arms burning. Leland stopped, staring at a new spiral of rocks, its center glowing like the discs. "Leland, move!" I scream, but he's reaching for it, like it's pulling him in. I fire a shot into the air, hoping to snap him out of it. The figures pause, but the chant doesn't stop. Sadie's clutching my jacket, whispering, "They want us to stay." I grab Leland's arm, yanking him forward, but he's fighting me, stronger than he should be. "It's calling," he shouts, eyes wild. My stomach drops. This is like that hiker's story, the one who went mad in these woods. I shove him toward the trail, but the path's wrong, looping back to the same damn spiral. The buzz spikes, making my vision blur. Sadie's screaming, pointing at the ground. More claw-like tracks, fresh, circling us. I fire another shot, this time at a figure. It staggers but doesn't fall, its glowing face tilting like it's curious. My heart's in my throat. We're not outrunning this. The cabin's in sight, its outline faint through the fog. I push Sadie ahead, yelling, "Get inside." She's fast, but Leland's slowing, dragging his feet like he's sleepwalking. The figures are closer, their chants now words I can't understand, sharp and cutting. I swing the shotgun, but there's nothing to aim at. They flicker in and out, like shadows with substance. We reach the porch, and I shove Sadie through the door, bolting it behind us. Leland's still outside, pounding on the wood, screaming, "Let me out. They need me." My hands shake as I hold the door shut, but his voice isn't right. Too deep, too calm. Sadie's crying, barricading the windows with chairs. The buzz is deafening, vibrating the cabin walls. I look outside and see the figures, standing in a semicircle, their glowing faces fixed on us. Leland's out there, kneeling by a new disc that's appeared in the yard, its symbols pulsing. I scream for him, but he doesn't look up. The bells we set up are ringing wildly, though there's no wind. I grab the truck keys, knowing we can't stay. "Sadie, we're going." I yell, but she's frozen, staring at her sketch pad. Those symbols are drawn in black ink, but they're glowing now, like they're alive. My skin crawls. We burst out the back door, aiming for the truck. The figures don't chase. They watch, their chants louder, like they're guiding Leland. He's standing now, walking toward them, his knife dropped in the mud. I shout his name, but it's useless. Sadie's clinging to me, her sobs choking her words. The truck's close, but the fog's so thick I can barely see it. I fumble the keys, my hands slick with sweat. The engine roars to life. Thank God. But as I slam the door, I see Leland vanish into the fog, the figures closing around him. My heart breaks, but I floor it, tires spinning. The trail's a nightmare, mud sucking at the wheels. Sadie's screaming for her dad, banging the window. The buzz follows us, fainter but persistent, and the blue glow lights up the rearview mirror. I'm thinking of a news report from Marble Mount, loggers finding strange carvings, then vanishing. Nobody believed them. Now I do. The figures aren't chasing, but I feel their eyes, like they're letting us go, for now. The chant's still in my head, worming its way in. Sadie's sketch pad is on the seat, its pages glowing faintly. I want to throw it out, but I'm too scared to touch it. We hit a paved road, the fog thinning, but my hands won't stop shaking. Sadie's curled up, silent now, her face pale. I'm driving blind, aiming for Marble Mount, praying the truck holds. The buzz is gone, but the silence is worse, heavy with what we've lost. I keep seeing Leland's face, how he walked toward those things like he wanted them. My fault. I should have dragged him harder, locked him inside. The forest's behind us, but it feels alive, like it's waiting. Sadie whispers, "They're not done," and I know she's right. Something's following us, and it's not letting go. The road twists, and I spot a ranger station ahead, its lights a faint hope. I'm about to pull in when the engine sputters, dying. My heart sinks. The buzz is back, faint but growing, and the glow's in the mirror again, closer. Sadie's crying, clutching the sketch pad like it's all she has. I grab the shotgun, knowing it's useless against those things. The chant starts again, low and steady, from the trees. We're not safe, not even close. I tell Sadie to run for the station, but her eyes are locked on the sketch pad, like it's pulling her in. I'm out of time, and the horror's not over. We stumble out of the truck, the ranger station's lights flickering through the fog. I'm dragging Sadie, her sketch pad still in her hands, its symbols glowing brighter. The chant's louder, echoing from the trees, and the buzz is back, shaking my bones. My shotgun's raised, but the figures are everywhere now. 5, maybe 6, their carved faces glowing blue, circling the station. I scream for help, but the building's dark, no rangers in sight. Sadie's muttering. They want the drawings, her voice not her own. My heart's breaking. I made a mistake bringing them here, thinking I could handle the wild. This is worse than any horror I imagined. I kick the station's door, but it's locked. The figures close in, their movements jerky, like they're not fully here. I fire at one, and it staggers, but the others don't flinch. Sadie's pulling away, toward the trees, her sketchpad open to a page of spiraling symbols that match the discs. "Sadie, stop!" I yell, grabbing her, but she's stronger than she should be, slipping from my grip. The chant's in my head now, words I don't understand but feel like they're rewriting me. I think of Leland, how he walked into the fog, and I know I'm losing her too. My mistake was not burning that sketchpad when I had the chance. Sadie bolts, running toward the figures, her sketchpad glowing like a beacon. I chase her, screaming, but the fog swallows her. The figures part, letting her through, then close ranks. I fire again, uselessly, tears blurring my vision. The buzz is deafening, and the ground shakes, like the discs are waking up. I remember a story from Tacoma, miners finding cursed artifacts, then disappearing. Nobody believed it, but I'm living it now. I stumble into the trees, calling Sadie's name, but the chant drowns me out. The figures are gone, and so is she, her sketchpad left in the mud, its pages blank now. I'm alone, the station silent behind me. I collapse, clutching the shotgun, my mind racing. I should have stayed in Tacoma, kept Sadie safe, never let Leland touch that disc. The forest's quiet again, but it's a lie. I feel those things watching. I stagger to the station, breaking a window to get inside. The radio's dead, no help coming. I find a logbook, pages torn, but one entry catches my eye. Glows at night, voices in the trees, don't touch the carvings. It's dated a week ago. My stomach churns. This has been happening, and nobody warned me. Days pass, and I'm back in Marblemount, staying at a motel. The cops search the woods, but find nothing. No Sadie, no Leland, no discs. They think I'm crazy, but I see the pity in their eyes. I keep Sadie's sketchpad, its blank pages haunting me. I dream of the figures, their carved faces, the chant that won't leave my head. I made a deadly mistake, thinking I could escape to the wild without consequences. The Cascades took my family, and I'm not sure I'm free. The buzz follows me, faint but there, even in town. I check the locks every night, but it's no use. I'm writing this in a notebook, hands shaking, because someone needs to know. The cops won't listen, and the townsfolk whisper about cursed woods. I think of Sadie's sketches, Leland's glassy eyes, and how I failed them. The horror's not just in the forest, it's in me now. That chant, those symbols. I saw a glow last night, outside my window, faint but blue. It's not over. I keep the shotgun loaded, but I know it's useless. The figures are patient, and they're waiting. I drive back to the cabin, against everyone's advice, because I need answers. The discs are gone, the spiral rocks scattered, but the scratches on the tree are deeper, fresh. I find Sadie's pencil in the mud, snapped in half. My heart breaks all over again. I was supposed to protect her, protect Leland. Now I'm alone, trapped in this nightmare. The buzz starts again, from the creek, and I see a figure in the fog, its face carved with glowing symbols. It doesn't move, just watches. I'm not running anymore. I sit on the porch, shotgun across my lap, waiting. The chant's louder, like it's calling me. I think of Sadie, how she ran to them, like she had to. Was it the symbols, the discs, or something deeper? I'll never know. The forest's alive, and it's angry. I made a tragic mistake, thinking I could live here without paying a price. The glow's closer now, and the figures are back, their carved faces clear in the fog. They're here for me. I write one last line in my notebook. Don't come looking. The buzz is in my head, the chant pulling me. I drop the pen, stand, and face the figures. They're not moving, but I feel them, like they're already inside me. The cabin's no sanctuary, it's a grave. I think of Sadie and Leland, and what I've lost. This was supposed to be my new start, but it's my end. The glow's blinding now, and I step toward it, shotgun falling. The horror's won, and I'm too tired to fight. Rain's dripping through the pines as I stack firewood outside my cabin in the Methow Valley, Washington, near Winthrop. I'm Tessa Varn, 38 years old, and this is my escape from the chaos of Spokane's newsrooms. I was a journalist, burned out on deadlines and bad coffee, so I traded it for this. 5 acres of forest, a wood stove, and a view of the Methow River. No internet, no neighbors, just me and my old typewriter. My brother, Callum, 33, a park ranger with a knack for fixing things, is due tomorrow with his buddy, Elise, a 29-year-old botanist who's always got dirt under her nails. They're my only link to the outside, and I'm still getting used to their visits interrupting my quiet. The cabin's small but sturdy, built by the previous owner, with a loft for sleeping and a propane lamp that casts a warm glow. I'm unpacking a crate of supplies, flour, matches, a new axe, when I notice the air's too still. The Methow Valley's wild, all rolling hills and thick firs, but tonight it feels like the forest's holding its breath. I shake it off, blaming my city nerves. Callum's always teasing me about jumping at shadows, but I'm no rookie. I've camped here for years. Still, I check the doors locked twice before sitting down to type. I'm working on a novel, something to keep my mind busy, but the keys stick, and my thoughts wander. Last night, I found a weird patch of ground near the river. Charred, like someone had a fire, but the ash was oily, not like wood. I figured it was old campers, but it's been nagging me. I jotted in my notebook, check burn site tomorrow. The typewriter's clack is the only sound, and it's comforting, like a heartbeat. But as I type, I hear a faint hum, low and steady, like a distant machine. My pulse picks up. There's no roads for miles. I step onto the porch, flashlight in hand, scanning the trees. The hum's gone, but the air smells wrong, sharp, like chemicals. I tell myself it's just the river, maybe some runoff from a distant farm. But my gut's twisting. I think of a story I covered in Spokane, loggers finding strange burn marks in the woods, then quitting without explanation. I laughed it off then, but now I'm not so sure. Back inside, I bolt the door and grab my notebook, sketching the burn site from memory. It's a habit, document everything, like I'm still chasing a scoop. Callum's truck rolls in tomorrow, so I busy myself with chores, chopping wood, checking the water filter. The river's high, rushing over rocks, and I spot another burn mark, smaller, near my usual fishing spot. My heart skips. It's fresh, the ground still warm. I kneel, touching the oily ash, and my fingers sting like I brushed nettles. I wipe them fast, but my skin's red, irritated. Probably just a reaction, I tell myself, but I'm spooked. The forest's too quiet. No owls, no rustling. I head back, gripping my axe tighter than I need to. Inside, I sip tea, trying to calm down. The cabin smells of cedar and damp earth, but that chemical tang lingers, like it's stuck in my nose. I think of Callum and Elise, how they'll bring noise and normalcy tomorrow. Callum's probably got a new story about drunk campers, and Elise will be rattling off plant names like a textbook. But as I settle into my chair, I hear it again, the hum, louder, coming from the river. I freeze, listening. It's not a machine, not quite. It's too organic, like a swarm of insects. My hands shake as I check the window. Nothing but darkness. Morning breaks, gray and misty. I'm up early, hauling water from the river. The burn mark's still there, and now there's a faint trail of ash leading into the trees. My stomach churns. I tell myself it's nothing, maybe kids messing around, but Winthrop's too far for that. Callum's truck crunches up the trail by noon, and I force a smile as he hops out, his ranger hat crooked. Elise follows, her backpack stuffed with notebooks, already eyeing the ferns. Nice setup, Tessa, Callum says, but his grin fades when he sees my face. You okay, he asks. I shrug, not ready to mention the hum or the ash. We sit on the porch, drinking coffee from my thermos. Elise is sketching a leaf, her pencil scratching softly, while Callum checks my axe, joking about my lumberjack face. I try to laugh, but I keep glancing at the trees. That chemical smells back, stronger, and I notice Elise sniffing the air, her brow furrowed. Something's off, she says, quiet enough that Callum doesn't hear. I nod, my heart racing. I mention the burn marks, keeping my voice light, but Callum's eyes narrow. Show us, he says, grabbing his flashlight. I hesitate, but we head out, the forest feeling smaller, tighter, like it's watching. At the river, the ash trails longer, snaking deeper into the woods. Callum kneels, touching it, and pulls his hand back fast, cursing. That burns, he says, his fingers red like mine. Elise is staring at the trees, her sketchpad forgotten. There's something out there, she whispers, pointing to a faint glow, greenish, flickering in the mist. My pulse spikes. It's not a campfire, not lightning. It's wrong, unsettling, like the hum. Callum's trying to joke, saying it's just swamp gas, but his voice is tight. The forest's too still, and I know we're not alone. Something's out here, and it's starting to scare me. The greenish glow flickers in the distance, and I'm gripping my axe, heart thumping. Callum's trying to play it cool, saying it's probably just marsh gas, but his red fingers, burned by that oily ash, tell a different story. Elise is frozen, her botanist brain racing as she stares at the trees near the Methow River. The chemical smells stronger, stinging my nose like bleach. I point out the ash trail snaking into the woods, and Callum's face hardens. That's not natural, he says, his ranger instincts kicking in. Elise nods, whispering about toxic runoff, but I'm thinking of that Spokane story, loggers quitting over cursed burns. My gut's screaming this is bad. We follow the trail, keeping close. The forest's too quiet, no birds, just that hum again, low and pulsing like a heartbeat. Elise spots another burn mark, bigger, with a faint spiral pattern in the ash. My skin crawls. It's like someone drew it deliberately. This is weird, she says, sketching it fast in her notebook. Callum's flashlight catches something else, a small glass vial, half buried in the dirt, filled with a glowing green liquid. He reaches for it, but I grab his arm. Don't. I snap, my voice sharper than I mean. That hum's louder, and I swear it's coming from the vial. Back at the cabin, we lock the door, but the tension's thick. Elise is flipping through her sketches, muttering about chemical compounds, while Callum's pacing, checking his burned fingers. I try to make dinner, beans and cornbread, but the hum's vibrating the windows, faint but constant. I'm thinking of a news piece I wrote about illegal dumping in Washington forests, chemicals leaking into rivers. But this feels different, more intentional, like someone's marking the land. I mention the vial, and Elise's eyes widen. Could be phosphorescent, she says, but her voice shakes. She's scared, and so am I. We decide to set up a watch, just in case. Callum takes first shift, sitting by the window with my shotgun. I'm trying to keep things light, joking about his ranger stories, but he's distracted, staring at the trees. Elise is quieter, her pencil scratching as she draws that spiral again. It's like a warning, she says, almost to herself. I glance at her notebook. The spiral matches the burn mark exactly, and my stomach twists. The hum stops, sudden, and the silence is worse, like the forest waiting. I check the locks again, my hands shaky. Around midnight, I hear a faint splash, like something heavy hit the river. Callum's already up, flashlight in hand. Stay here, he says, but I grab my axe and follow. Elise stays with her notebook, her face pale. Outside, the air's thick with that chemical smell, and the ash trails fresh, leading to the water. We find another vial, cracked, its green liquid seeping into the mud. The river's glowing faintly, a sickly green that makes my skin crawl. Callum curses, saying we should have stayed in town. I want to argue, but that hum's back, closer, like it's under the ground. We head back, but the cabin feels wrong. The propane lamp's flickering, though I filled it yesterday. Elise is staring at her sketch, her hands trembling. The spiral moved, she whispers, showing me the page. The lines are different, sharper, like they redrew themselves. My heart's racing. This is beyond creepy, it's disturbing. Callum suggests we pack up and drive to Winthrop, but I'm torn. Part of me wants to stay, figure this out, like I'm still chasing a story. But the glow's brighter outside, pulsing in the trees, and I know we're not alone. Morning comes, gray and heavy. The hum's constant now, and the river's glow hasn't faded. Callum's checking the truck, but he finds the battery cables corroded, like they've been splashed with acid. This ain't right, he says, his voice low. Elise is packing her bag, but she keeps glancing at her notebook, like it's pulling her. I notice my own hands, still red from the ash, now blistered. We agree to hike to higher ground, get a signal to call for help. But as we step outside, we see it, a new burn mark, right by the porch, with a vial in its center, glowing bright. My pulse spikes. Someone's been here. We grab what we can, shotgun, water, Elise's notebook, and head out. The trail's muddy, and I spot more ash trails, crisscrossing like a map. The hum's louder, vibrating in my chest, and the chemical smells choking. Elise is muttering about toxins, but her eyes are glassy, like she's fighting something. Callum's leading, but he's jumpy, checking his burned fingers every few steps. I'm thinking of that logger story again. Men quitting over burns that followed them. It's starting to feel real, and it's scaring me. Halfway up the trail, we find another vial, this one intact, its green liquid swirling like it's alive. Elise reaches for it, but I slap her hand away. Don't touch it. I yell, my voice cracking. She blinks, like waking up, but her face is pale. The hum's deafening now, and the glow's everywhere, flickering through the trees. Callum points to a clearing ahead, where the ash forms a massive spiral, big enough to cover the ground. My heart stops. Something's out here, marking the forest, and it knows we're here. The air's heavy, and I feel eyes on us, watching, waiting. The massive spiral of ash looms in the clearing, its edges glowing green under the fog. The hum's so loud it's shaking my teeth, and my blistered hands ache as I grip the shotgun. Callum's frozen, staring at the spiral, while Elise clutches her notebook, her eyes wide with fear. The Methow Valley's trees feel like they're closing in, the air thick with that chemical stench. I spot movement in the fog, something low, slinking, not human. My heart's pounding. We need to move, I whisper, but Callum's muttering about the glow, like it's calling him. This isn't just weird, it's terrifying, and I know something's horribly wrong. We back away, but the hum spikes, and the spiral's glow pulses brighter, like a heartbeat. Elise gasps, pointing at the trees. There's a shape, low, hunched, with too many limbs, like a dog but twisted, its skin glistening like oil. It's watching us, its eyes glinting green, matching the vials. I raise the shotgun, but my hands shake, and it slips into the fog before I can fire. Callum's voice is low, almost trance-like. It's in the ground. My stomach twists. I think of a story I covered. Miners finding glowing rocks, then vanishing. This feels like that, but alive, malicious. The shape appears again, joined by another, their movements jerky, like they're not fully solid. The hum's in my head now, buzzing words I can't make out. Elise is sketching frantically, her pencil carving spirals that glow faintly on the page. Stop it, I snap, grabbing her notebook, but she yanks it back, eyes wild. It's telling me, she whispers, and my skin crawls. Callum's no better, kneeling by the spiral, touching the ash like it's sacred. His fingers blister instantly, but he doesn't flinch. I yell his name, but he's gone, lost in whatever this is. The forest's alive, and it's hunting us. We try to retreat, but the trail's different, looping back to the spiral. The fog's thicker, the chemical smell choking. I fire a warning shot, and the shapes scatter, but the hum doesn't stop. Elise drops her notebook, and I see the pages, spirals, symbols, all glowing green, like they're infected. I kick it into the ash, hoping it'll break her trance, but she screams, diving for it. Callum's still kneeling, muttering. It's under us. I grab his arm, but his skin's hot, like fever, and he shoves me away. My heart's racing. This is horror, raw and real. The shapes are closer, circling the clearing. I count 3 now, their oily bodies glinting, moving like liquid. Their eyes lock on us, and I feel a pull, like the hum's tugging my thoughts. I shake it off, yelling for Elise to run. She's clutching her notebook, sobbing, they want it. I don't know what they are, but I feel them, everywhere, in the ground, the air. The spiral's glowing brighter, and I notice the ground's shifting, like something's moving beneath it. My pulse spikes. This isn't natural. It's something ancient, something disturbing. I drag Elise, but she's fighting, her eyes glassy like Callum's. The shapes are bolder, one lunging close enough to graze my leg. Its touch burns, like acid, and I stumble, dropping the shotgun. The hum's deafening, and the spiral's ash swirls without wind, forming new patterns. I think of that miner story, men raving about things in the earth. I didn't believe it then, but now I'm living it. Callum's standing now, walking toward the shapes, his hands dripping ash. Callum, no. I scream, but he doesn't hear me. The forest's a trap, and we're caught. I grab the shotgun, my leg burning where the shape touched me. Elise is muttering, sketching in the air like she's possessed. The shapes are everywhere, their eyes glowing brighter, and the ground shakes harder, like something's waking up. I fire at one, and it screeches, a sound like metal tearing, and melts into the fog. But more come, slinking from the trees. I pull Elise toward the trail, but she's heavy, dragging her feet. Callum's gone, swallowed by the fog, his voice blending with the hum. My heart's breaking, but I can't stop. We're in deep, and it's life or death. The cabin's our only hope, but the trail's a maze, the spirals glow following us. The shapes are relentless, their screeches mixing with the hum, like they're coordinating. Elise is barely with me, whispering about the pattern. I'm thinking of that newsroom in Spokane, how I'd give anything for its noise now. The burn on my legs spreading, my skin red and blistered. I'm scared, more than I've ever been. The shapes are hurting us, and I don't know if the cabin's safe. The hum's in my bones, and I feel it. Something's under the ground, rising. We stumble through the fog, the cabin's outline faint. The shapes are behind us, their eyes like green flames. Elise drops her notebook again, and I let it go, knowing it's cursed. The ground shakes harder, and I hear a new sound, a low, grinding roar, like stone splitting. The spiral's glow lights up the fog, and I see Callum's silhouette, standing in the clearing, surrounded by shapes. He's not fighting them. My stomach lurches. Something's clearly wrong, worse than I feared. The forest isn't just alive, it's hungry, and we're its prey. The ground shakes harder, the grinding roar deafening as I drag Elise through the fog. The Medhow Valley's a nightmare now, the spiral's green glow pulsing behind us like a heartbeat. Callum's silhouette is gone, swallowed by the shapes. The those oily, multi-limbed things with glowing eyes. My legs burning where one touched me, blisters spreading, and the shotgun's heavy in my shaking hands. Elise is barely moving, muttering about the pattern like she's possessed. The hum's in my skull, pulling at my thoughts, but I scream at her to run. The cabin's close, but the shapes are closer, their screeches like metal claws on glass. We're in a life or death sprint, and I'm not sure we'll make it. We stumble onto the cabin's porch, the door ajar. Someone's been here. My heart's hammering as I shove Elise inside, slamming the bolt. The hum's so loud the windows rattle, and the green glow lights up the yard. Elise collapses, clutching her glowing notebook, its spirals moving like they're alive. I yell at her to drop it, but she's gripping it like a lifeline, eyes glassy. The shapes are outside, circling, their eyes burning through the fog. I fire a shot through the window, and one screeches, melting into the ground, but more take its place. The ground shakes again, and I hear a crack, like the earth's splitting open. I grab Elise, dragging her to the back door. The truck's our only hope, but it's 100 yards through the trees. The hum's messing with my head, whispering things I can't understand. I think of Callum, how he walked into the fog, and my chest aches. I can't lose Elise too. She's fighting me, clawing for her notebook, screaming. It's not done. I slap it from her hands, and it hits the floor, pages glowing brighter. The shapes screech outside, louder, like they're angry. I pull Elise toward the door, but the ground lurches, throwing us down. Something's under the cabin, moving. We crawl out the back, the fog so thick I can barely see. The truck's outline is faint, but the shapes are everywhere, their oily bodies slinking through the trees. I fire again, and one staggers, but they're too fast. Elise is sluggish, muttering about the spirals, her hands blistered like mine. My legs on fire, the burn spreading up my thigh. I think of that spoken story, loggers raving about things in the earth before vanishing. This is real, and it's killing us. We reach the truck, and I fumble the keys, my hands slick with sweat. The engine sputters, but starts. Thank God. I floor it, tires spinning in the mud. Elise is in the passenger seat, staring blankly, her hands tracing spirals in the air. The shapes don't chase. They watch, their green eyes glowing like lanterns. The hum follows, vibrating the truck, and the glows in the rearview mirror, pulsing closer. I'm thinking of a news piece I wrote about chemical spills, how they poison everything. But this isn't a spill, it's deliberate, alive. The road's a mess, branches scraping the truck, and I'm praying we make it to Winthrop. Elise whispers, "They're in me," and my heart stops. Her eyes are glowing faintly, green. The shapes appear on the road, blocking us. I swerve, nearly crashing, and fire out the window. One screeches, dissolving, but the others keep coming. The ground shakes again, and I see it, a crack in the earth, glowing green, like the spirals alive. Elise is screaming now, her hands clawing at her face, leaving red marks. I grab her wrist, yelling her name, but she's slipping, like Callum did. The hum's in my head, pulling me too, but I fight it, focusing on the road. Winthrop's close, but the glow's closer, and I hear that grinding roar, like something's breaking free. We hit a paved road, the fog thinning, but the truck's engine coughs, slowing. My legs numb, the burn reaching my hip. Elise is quiet, her eyes fully green now, like the shapes. I shake her, screaming, "Stay with me," but she's gone, muttering in a language I don't know. The shapes are behind us, their screeches blending with the hum. I see lights ahead, Winthrop's outskirts, but the truck stalls, and the glow's right behind us. I grab the shotgun, knowing it's useless. Elise opens her door, stepping out, drawn to the shapes. I scream for her, but the hum drowns me out. I leap out, pulling Elise back, but she's strong, slipping from my grip. The shapes are on us, their oily limbs brushing my skin, burning like acid. I fire wildly, hitting one, but they're too many. The ground splits wider, green light pouring out, and I see something moving in it. Not a shape, but bigger, like a mass of liquid and eyes. My heart's in my throat. This is life or death, and we're losing. Elise walks toward the crack, her notebook in the mud, glowing like a beacon. I grab her, but she turns, her face blank, and whispers, "It's home." The shapes close in, and I'm out of time. I run for Winthrop, dragging Elise, but she's heavy, fighting me. The lights are close, a gas station, maybe salvation. But the ground shakes harder, and the shapes are everywhere, their screeches deafening. I stumble, dropping the shotgun, and Elise breaks free, running toward the crack. I scream her name, but she's gone, swallowed by the glow. The hum's in my bones, and I feel it pulling me too. I crawl toward the lights, my leg useless, the burn spreading. The shapes don't follow, they watch, like they know I'm done. I'm alone, and the horror's won. I collapse at the gas station's edge, Winthrop's lights blurring through my tears. The hum's faint now, but it's in me, like a virus. My legs swollen, the burn black and oozing, and I can't feel my toes. The shapes are gone, but I see their eyes in the dark, green and unblinking. I scream for help, and a clerk runs out, calling 911. My mind's racing. Callum, Elise, both gone, drawn into that crack like it was calling them. I made a deadly mistake, thinking I could live in the Medhow Valley without paying a price. This wasn't a chemical spill. It was something older, hungrier, and it took my family. The ambulance comes, and I'm babbling about glowing vials, shapes, and spirals. The paramedics think I'm delirious, but I see their faces tighten when I mention the burns. They wrap my leg, but the pain's deeper, like the hum's carved into me. At the hospital in Winthrop, the cops listen, but their eyes say I'm crazy. I tell them about the crack, the shapes, but they find nothing. No vials, no spirals, just ash piles that dissolve in the rain. I think of that logger story, men raving about things in the earth. Nobody believed them, and nobody believes me. My mistake was not running sooner. Days pass, and I'm stuck in a hospital bed, my leg bandaged but not healing. The doctors whisper about unknown toxins, but I know better. The hum's still in my head, faint but constant, and I dream of the shapes, their oily limbs and glowing eyes. Callum's gone, Elise too, and I keep seeing her face, blank and green, walking into that crack. I clutch her notebook, found in the mud, its pages blank now, like the forest erased it. The horror's not just out there, it's in me, in the burns, the hum. I failed them, thinking I could protect us. I check out of the hospital, against advice, and head back to the cabin. The ash piles are gone, the vials missing, but the river's still glowing faintly, green and sick. I find Callum's ranger hat in the mud, scorched like my leg. My heart breaks again. I was supposed to keep them safe, but I brought them into this nightmare. The cops won't search anymore, saying it's a lost cause. I write this in my notebook, hands shaking, because someone needs to know. The Medhow Valley's not empty. It's alive, and it's angry. I'm alone now, the cabin a shell. The hum's louder at night, coming from the river. I see the glow again, faint but there, and sometimes I hear screeches, like the shapes are waiting. My leg's worse, the burn spreading, and I feel the hum pulling me, like it did Elise. I keep the shotgun loaded, but it's useless against what's out there. I think of Spokane, my old life, how I'd give anything to go back. My mistake was thinking I could escape here, that the wild was safe. It's not, it's a trap. I'm writing this on the porch, the glow brighter tonight, pulsing like it's calling. The ground shakes faintly, and I hear that grinding roar, like the cracks opening again. I see a shape in the fog, its eyes green, watching. I'm scared, but I'm tired of running. The hum's in my head, whispering, and I feel it. I'm marked, like Callum and Elise. The notebook's all I have left, a warning nobody'll believe. The shapes are closer, their screeches louder, and I know they're here for me. I drop the pen, my leg throbbing, the burn black to my knee. The glow's blinding, and the ground shakes harder, like something's rising. I think of Callum's laugh, Elise's sketches, and how I lost them. This was supposed to be my fresh start, but it's my end. The hum's pulling me, and I'm too weak to fight. The shapes step closer, their oily limbs gleaming, and I feel the earth split under me. I whisper, "I'm sorry," to nobody, and step toward the glow. It's warm, like a promise. The shapes don't touch me. They guide me, their eyes locked on mine. The crack's wide now, green light pouring out, and I see it. The mass of eyes and liquid, pulsing like a heart. The hum's all I hear, and it's not words anymore, just need. I was wrong to come here, wrong to think I could live untouched. The Medhow Valley's claimed me, like it claimed them. The notebook's in the mud, my last words unread. The horror's won, and I'm part of it now. I'm gone, like Callum, like Elise. The crack closes, The glow fades, and the forest's quiet again. But it's not empty. It's waiting, always waiting, for the next one to try living here. The hum never stops, and neither do the shapes. They're patient, and they're hungry. My mistake was thinking I could outrun them. Nobody can.